Pastor D.L. Crawford of Avery Chapel AME Church is here. He's to lead us in the invocation. Afterwards, I'll ask Councilman Greiner if he'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. But would everyone please stand?
Dear God, we give you thanks for your presence, for the call to serve. We acknowledge that you sit high and look low, and that you are watching over each of us. Now, Lord, we pray for our mayor, for each elected official, for each employee, for support staff. Lord, even for blessings upon the woman who is gardening as we engage these proceedings. We ask, O God, that you will bless this council meeting and shower all of us with your wisdom, your compassion, and your love as we engage the business for the city of Oklahoma City and all of our citizens. Thank you, and we bless your name for what you are about to do. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Crawford, I'm glad you're still here. I wanted to thank you for the after-school programs you and your church are putting together in the northeast side of Oklahoma City. It's very helpful. And those that got to the council meeting early today got to enjoy Morris McCraven's trio. How did that go? Was anybody here? Yeah? I ran into Morris in the hallway. He said they've been doing it for 30 years, coming to council meetings early one Tuesday morning every year. And, of course, it is all about helping to celebrate Charlie Christian's Music Festival Week. And let's see, I know Anita's here. Ladies, come on up. We have a proclamation to draw attention to Charlie Christian and the music festival that's coming up here in June. And we have a proclamation. Let's the clerk to read it.
Whereas the Black Liberty Arts Center, now in its 47th year, was organized to showcase the cultures of African Americans and has brought to our city and our state the best in fine arts and arts education experiences to help develop the artistic talents and teaching abilities of Oklahomans. Whereas the Black Liberated Arts Center has produced the annual Charlie Christian International Music Festival in Oklahoma City for the education and enrichment of all people for 32 years. Whereas the Black Liberated Arts Center recognizes the contributions of many Oklahoma musicians to the field of music through the Charlie Christian International Music Festival to be held June 2nd and 3rd. Whereas the Black Liberated Arts Center will celebrate the conclusion of Charlie Christian's centennial birthday with music, dance, workshops, and a special recognition program during the 32nd Annual Charlie Christian International Music Festival. Whereas the Black Liberated Arts Center has brought immeasurable recognition to Oklahoma City through the Charlie Christian International Music Festival and has established the festival as an international attraction for Oklahoma City as a sponsoring organization of the event and posthumous recipient of the Nessie Ertegun Jazz Hall of Fame Award given at Lincoln Center in New York City. Now therefore, Mick Cornett, the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim June 2nd and 3rd as Charlie Christian International Music Festival Days in Oklahoma City, and he encourages all citizens to take this opportunity to experience the musical artistry of the festival and commend the Black Liberated Arts Center for their service to this community.
Anita Arnold and Donna Cox are here to help us celebrate Charlie Christian Music Days. Let's a round of applause for them. It is this weekend.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to all of our honorable representatives here. We invite each of you and them to come out and join us for the Charlie Christian International Music Festival, June 2nd and 3rd. It's all indoors this year, no outdoors. The jam session, June 2nd, will be at the Art Space at Untitled Gallery, 1 Northeast 3rd Street. It's going to be great. And on June 3rd, we have our final salute to Charlie Christian on his 100th birthday at the Embassy Suite, 741 North Phillips. And the fun begins at 6 o'clock on Saturday and 7 o'clock on Friday night. And I wanted to especially be sparkly this morning because this may be my last opportunity to stand here with the mayor since he's not going to run anymore. Yes. So just for you, Mr. Mayor, I told Donna I'm usually not sparkly at the city council meeting. But anyway, it's been great fun, and we appreciate all the support you've given us, all these many years for the festival. And we look forward to your next step in life.
I appreciate that, and the festival is one of the highlights. Charlie Christian, for the most part, invented the electric guitar. That is no small feat. But he was an Oklahoma City jazz musician in the 1940s. We lost Charlie way too soon, but his memory is kept alive by music aficionados around the world. And every year there are people that travel internationally to Oklahoma City to be a part of the Charlie Christian Jazz Festival. So thanks for what you're doing at Oklahoma City, and thanks for keeping Charlie Christian's memory alive. All right, let's show our appreciation for these ladies. Thanks, Donna. It is also Historic Preservation Week, and we have a few people that have come into our council chambers this morning. Come on up. It's a big group. We have a proclamation. I'll ask the clerk to read it.
Whereas the nation is currently commemorating the 50th anniversary of the National Historic Preservation Act, which created programs and agencies responsible for ensuring that the nation's vital legacy of culture, educational, aesthetic, inspirational, economic, and energy benefits will be maintained and enriched for future generations of Americans. Whereas this act established the programs of the Oklahoma State Historic Preservation Office, which since 1989 has sponsored an annual statewide preservation conference to provide public education, professional training, and networking opportunities in historic preservation. This act also created the Certified Local Government Program, empowering Oklahoma City to play an important role in the preservation of its own historic resources. For the first time since 1995, the annual statewide preservation conference will be held in downtown Oklahoma City, highlighting the transformation of Oklahoma City through the revitalization of countless historic structures and districts in the past 2 decades. Whereas historic preservation promotes Oklahoma City's unique character and cultural identity, is integral to the ongoing renaissance of our city, creating thriving neighborhoods, vibrant commercial districts, and distinctive landmarks throughout Oklahoma City. Whereas public-private partnerships are the key to success in historic preservation, and joining the State Historic Preservation Office to support the conference are Preservation Oklahoma, Inc., the Oklahoma Department of Commerce, Oklahoma Main Street Center, American Institute of Architects, the Central Oklahoma Chapter, American Planning Association, the Oklahoma chapter, City of Oklahoma City, the Civic Center Music Hall, Downtown OKC, Inc., Okie Mod Squad, Oklahoma Arts Council, Oklahoma City Foundation for Architecture, Stockyards, City Main Street, and the Urban Land Institute of Oklahoma. Whereas 50 years ago, Oklahoma City published its first study of historic preservation to identify and preserve the character and heritage of the city, and now co-sponsors this important event. Whereas we wish to welcome hundreds of visitors to Oklahoma City to experience Oklahoma's 29th Annual Statewide Preservation Conference from June 7th through 9th. Now therefore, Mick Cornett, the Mayor of the City of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim June 5th through 9th as Historic Preservation Week in Oklahoma City, and calls upon residents to celebrate the history, architecture, cultural, and revitalization of the historic, architectural, and archaeology resources throughout our city.
And we have come a long way in historic preservation. Let's show our appreciation to these individuals who do so much to keep us organized. Tell us about Historic Preservation Week.
Great. My name is David Pettyjohn. I'm the Executive Director of Preservation Oklahoma, and I have the honor of standing up here with my esteemed colleagues. We have a lot of wonderful partners who have joined to put forth an amazing conference next week. As the proclamation said, it's the first time since 1995. And we really look forward to highlighting all of our successes in Oklahoma City. The conference will take place primarily at the Civic Center Music Hall. So we still have opportunities for you to join us. You haven't missed out yet. You can go and still register. We have some amazing tours as well, and we are delighted to be here in Oklahoma City next week, June 7th through 9th. So we hope you can join us.
All right, and I'll just remind our audience that we're in the midst of really the largest historic preservation project in Oklahoma City history in the First National Center. It's going to take some time, it's going to take a lot of partners, and really it's going to take the entire city's support to make that building what it could be. And I know each of you is an advocate for that project. So thanks for what you're doing. Historical preservation is very, very important to this generation of people in Oklahoma City who have created this incredible place just here in the last few years. Let's show our appreciation for our advocacy. Very much. Thank you. We're on item 3 of the council agenda. I'll look for a motion on the appointments.
Second.
All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 4 is a journal of council proceedings. 4A is to receive the journal for May 9th, 16th, and 23rd, and 4B is to approve the journal for May 2nd. All right, comments or questions on the journal? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And item 5 is request for uncontested continuances.
None this morning.
All right. Any requests from council members? We'll move on to item 6. This is revocable permits. The first is a request with Perry Publishing and Broadcasting to hold the Juneteenth Festival, June 17th in Washington Park. Is there anyone here representing Perry Broadcasting? All right. How about a motion then on 6A? John?
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I make the motion, I just want to thank Perry Broadcasting and Communication, Mr. Russell Perry and Kevin Perry, for continuing hosting this festival. The festival will start at 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. and it will be held at the Washington Park, 400 North High Avenue. With that being said, Mr. Mayor, I move for approval.
All right. We're voting on item 6A. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 6B is a request from Freedom, Oklahoma to hold the Equality Run. It'll be June 17th in downtown Oklahoma City. Meg, you okay with this? All right.
Is there
looks like
anybody
we
here
have
that wants to speak?
an organizer coming
Good
forward.
morning.
We'll need your name and address for the record.
Troy Stevenson, 4001 North Classen.
Tell us about your event, George.
So it's our 5th annual Equality Run. All the proceeds go to helping LGBTQ youth and HIV/AIDS.
How many people do you expect to run?
500 people this year.
Wow, good crowd. That's June 17th, and how can people find out more about it?
It's at freedomoklahoma.org. You can sign up and all the
right.
information is
Meg, it's in Ward 6.
Great, good luck, move approval.
All right, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Thanks and
you.
good luck. Item 6C is a request from the Quail Creek Homeowners Association to hold the Creek Run. That'll be this weekend. Is anyone here from the Quail Creek Homeowners Association that wants to talk about their event? All right. Mark's not here. I know that's in Ward 8, so I'll take a motion from anyone who wants to give it. All right. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 6D is a request for the Red Earth Parade, which would be June 9th in downtown Oklahoma City. Anybody here from Red Earth? All right. Meg, I know this is one of the prime events in Ward 6
This is a real
every year.
highlight. This is an incredibly busy weekend with everything that's going on. But the parade is Friday downtown, costumes, dancing, food. It's a wonderful event. I would encourage everybody to come, and I would move approval.
Yeah, and if family and friends from other parts of the state that might want to come in for the weekend, it's a really great way to show off Oklahoma's heritage. We have a motion. Did we get a second? Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, we'll recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. There are 3 items. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any comments on the MFA? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCMFA, convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority. 6 items here. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes on the PPA.
Mayor, could I just mention number
Passes
D?
unanimously. Yeah, go ahead.
It won't affect my vote. Item D is the preliminary engineering report for the Civic Center sound system upgrades. And I just want to be sure and hope that this includes our commitment to working on a hearing assisted sound system. We've all been learning a lot about what that means, and I really appreciate the work of Dennis Clowers. But I think this will provide us an opportunity to really bring in the most advanced technology for those that need hearing assistance.
Well, I appreciate your involvement and your interest in this, and we've been obviously learning a little bit more in the last week or two, and hopefully we'll come up with a solution that will work for all.
Great. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll convene as the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust. 2 items. Okay, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on the EAT. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCEAT and reconvene the council meeting with the consent docket.
Second.
All right. Anybody have anything? Larry?
BI.
And Mayor, I had AW and AX.
And Mr. Mayor, AZ.
All right, Larry, you want to get us started with AY?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. AY is a notification that the ownership of the outlet malls has changed. A new company has come in to take over, and they're very excited about the potential that the outlet malls hold for Oklahoma City and for the surrounding area. It's kind of indicative of what's going on in that whole area along I-40. Last week we had the dedication of the True Flag Motel, New Hilton Flag at I-40 and South Meridian. I think you participated in that dedication, and that was a big event. And then, of course, a couple months ago we had the Bennett Event Center open up at the fairgrounds. So we're positioning ourselves to really attract people into that part of Oklahoma City to stimulate the economy and the sales tax. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, James, BI?
Yeah, One Oak is building a natural gas pipeline through Route 66 Park, and they had to take down a number of trees. And so this resolution that's on our agenda today is a donation from them of $54,000 to mitigate the tree loss and to make any other improvements to the park. And so just thanking them for that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Meg, AW?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention and thank the Homeless Alliance. W was just an extension of some time in a grant application for, it's the Emergency Solutions Grant, and there was some dollars left over from last year that we're going to be able to expend coming into the new year. And so I just wanted to recognize the Homeless Alliance for the work that they do. Item X and Y are both related to National Register nominations. And given that it's Preservation Week, I just wanted to mention the two projects. The first is the Uptown Theater and Uptown Medical Building at 1212 North Hudson. And the second is the Langston Medical Group Clinic at 1214 North Hudson, all of which this authorizes you to sign the applications for their National Register.
All right. And do you have another item you wanted to talk about?
No.
All right. John?
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have one question as it relates to the LED lights. We're going from 57 that's being currently planned to 36, and I just want to know, why do we have a decrease in the LED lights? But this is a great opportunity, I do believe, for our city, in focusing on several areas. The Adventure District, as well as a portion of Northeast 8th Street from I-235 to North Lincoln, from Remington Place to Martin Luther King to I-35. And I just wanted to know why we went from 57 to 36.
Dave Dollar can explain that.
Yeah, Councilman, it was simply an error on OG&E's part of how many lights they were going to do. We didn't change the area. They just had copied over or included the wrong number. This is a correction to get the actual number, so it's not a change in the area or the intent. It was just to clarify the correct number.
All right, thank you. And I do believe, again, that this is a great opportunity for our city to continue to expand LED lights in our great city.
Yeah, we need to do all of them, but we're working with OG&E, and it's not happening as quickly as I think we all would like it to, but it's happening.
Mayor, that was actually my question, and I just wondered if we had a process going forward. Recently I've had a lot of concern about Automobile Alley and the lighting that was put in about almost 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And, it's dark in the evenings, and how we might take a look at that to improve driver safety along that pedestrian street.
I believe OG&E is having some issues with the Corporation Commission as they're establishing a tariff for these rates, and so they were going to start with the demonstration project, and it's really a little bit out of our hands, but we will continue to let them know that it's a priority. The mayor has not let me forget that it's a priority for him, and so we have been having conversations for quite a while, and the mayor has been a fairly significant advocate for this.
All right, ready to vote the concurrence docket?
No, sir. We have a presentation from David Todd. We're going to looking to award the contract on the MAPS 3 Park this morning, an exciting project.
Which item is that?
It is BD.
Well, good morning. I'm very glad and happy to be here in front of you with the bid for the park so that we can get this project started. What we have today is a piece of the presentation that was prepared by the MAPS office with ADG and Mike Mize, his team. But this is, as I said, a piece of the project, or of the presentation that was given to the advisory board. So real quick, the I-Plan budget Upper Park was $100 million. As we went through the preliminary report stage and as we started on the Lower Park preliminary report, we revised that budget to $95 million in order to better serve the Lower Park. And then you can see the current project balance, and that includes the contingency and the administration and all those items. So what we really need to focus on is the current construction balance of $51,745,077. This is the financials, and what we're really interested in this morning is the right column, the current projection. You can see that the projected total sales tax to be collected right now is $797,405,115. Then we have the interest that has been collected of 13.8, and then projected future interest of another $6 million. Then we've got the miscellaneous building rental collections. Then you add all those up, we have a total projected revenue of $817 million. Now, when you look at all the approved budgets, and when I say approved budgets, that's the budgets that was in the I-plan, but also the additions that were made to them. For instance, the additions that was added to the sidewalk and the wellness center and the streetcar, those are all in that 786. So when you do the math on that, you get a projected excess revenue of $30.4 million. And then within that budget, there was a program contingency amount. Some of that has been spent, and the balance right now is 7.4. So if you add the excess revenue and the contingency balance, you get 37.8 in funds that will be that are projected to be available at the end of the collections.
Now, Dave, that does take into consideration the slowing down of the sales tax collections for the last 6 or 7 months of the program.
It does. It does, and Craig is here in case we have any more questions about that. So today we're here to talk about the Upper Park only. This is one of my favorite renderings of the Upper Park. It shows the promenade and the fountain and the grass area there. The great lawn is just to the right there on that picture. So with the Upper Park, we had some additional expenses that we didn't anticipate, such as public utility relocations. We relocated a 30-inch water line, and we upgraded the 42-inch storm sewer to a 90-inch storm sewer, and that's because most of downtown is draining through there, and we decided to go ahead and upgrade that section so that 5 or 10 years from now, when parts of downtown get renovated, we won't be digging up the park to do that storm sewer. Then there was some environmental remediation, some miscellaneous minor construction, like the sidewalk that went through the park temporarily. It was there about 6 years, so that people could have access from the Myriad Gardens down to the river. And then there were some overruns on A&E services, and that is due to the $4 million in additional facilities that the operator had requested. That was an estimate at the time of $4 million, and those are opportunities for additional revenue that they felt like they needed in the park. So here's the low bid of Downey Contracting. Remember, Downey is the organization that built the Whitewater facility, did a great job out there. This is their base bid of $46 million, which was within the budget, and then we had the various alternates in there. Most of those are, as I explained, the opportunities for additional revenue, except for the water main replacement. The fountain was one of those alternates that we would like to award today. It's an interactive fountain. It's a very large fountain. And this is the pavilion that was added, and this is one of those alternates that was put in for additional revenue. This pavilion is 60 to 80 feet wide and about that long. Obviously, it's covered there. It has restrooms. It has some offices in there. It can be used for weddings, reunions, any kind of gatherings out there in the park, and also for shelter. So what we're asking today is the base bid, and then alternates 1 through 7 and 9. And 9 up here is in red because what we want to do is award that with the project, but the Water Utilities Trust will pay that money. There's a 100-year-old 12-inch water line that extends out across Union Station. Didn't necessarily need to be replaced, but since it's 100 years old, Utilities Department thinks it's a good idea to go ahead and replace it now while we're working out there so that we don't have to dig up the park right after it opens. If you add those numbers, they do not add up to the 57.5. You have to take the 139 out because, as I said, the Utilities Department is paying for that. So if you take that 57.5 and our current construction balance of 51.7, there's an additional requirement for $5,755,406.15. And as the subcommittee and the advisory board both reviewed this item, they both recommended that we award the base bid and the alternates and take the $5,755,000 out of the contingency account. I can answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? David, thanks. I know you've been working with our Citizen Subcommittee and the Advisory Board, and the process is never easy, but boy, this has been as clean and exciting as anything I've seen. So thanks for all your work there. I know your staff's done a lot of work, so please thank them for us.
Thank you.
Any other presentations on the...
No, sir.
All right. All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Puts us on to the concurrence docket. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the concurrence?
I have two.
Yeah, Jay.
J and L.
All right, go ahead.
And they're just comments. J is actually the Water Utilities Trust is going to study people swimming in our water reservoirs to see what the positives and negatives are. And I think it's a good idea because I get quite a few questions about why we can't swim in the lakes, and then other people that say they're glad that you can't swim in the lakes and those sorts of things. So I think getting a good positives and negatives of why of whether we should change that or not is a good idea.
I've heard both those comments over the years, too.
Okay, yeah. I'm sure everybody that represents people around Lake Hefner get that numerous times. And then on L, I just wanted to point out that this is just a water and wastewater agreement with Moore, and just pointing out that whole Mustang de-annexation thing we had a few weeks ago, I mean, this is something that would allow that developer to do what they wanted to do if there was an agreement like this with the city of Mustang.
Specifically, what this allows us to do is work with the city of Moore, and if there are areas in Oklahoma City that we can't practically serve but they can, we work out a deal and let them serve that area in Oklahoma City. It remains in Oklahoma City, and they provide the service to that. And quite frankly, we do that not always through a formal agreement. Sometimes there's side agreements with a lot of different cities on just little different areas that pop out. When we're 620-some square miles, you get a lot of opportunities to take a look at funny little areas out there, especially with so many suburban areas that we have around us.
That's all I had.
Okay. Ready to vote the concurrence?
Consent.
No, we're on the...
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're on the concurrence. All right, sorry. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, item 9 is items that require a separate vote. We'll start with a series of zoning cases. The first is an ABC issue in Ward 8. Is there anyone here representing the project here on item 9A1?
Yes, Mayor, my name is Bill Comstock, 501 Northwest 13th Street. I represent the applicant for this project. It's going to be a new Outback Steakhouse.
Wonderful. And what's the location going to be?
It's in the, I'll call it the Lowe's parking lot. It's a new
pad site?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, 2402 West Memorial Road.
That's right.
Great. Anyone here speaking against this project? All right, how about a motion in Mark's absence? Cast your votes. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good luck. All right, item 9A2 is a zoning case in Ward 5. It's also an ABC issue. It's on Southwest 89th Street. David?
Thank you, Your Honor. Is there anyone here wishing to protest this matter? You could come up. Yes, you're the applicant. Yes. Would you like to explain your...
Hello, Mayor and all the members. My name is Hung Keo. I'm located at the 2800 Southwest 135th, and I'm the owner of the Bistro B, and we opened the Asian restaurant on the shopping center of the corner of the Southwest 89 and South Penn Avenue.
Yes. Thank you. I move for approval.
All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Item 9A3 is a zoning case in Ward 6. It's also an ABC issue. It's at 2124 North Broadway. Meg?
Is the applicant here? Why don't you come tell us about the new restaurant? We're all excited.
Great. Yeah, I'm Shelley Reynolds, 2124 North Broadway, and we're opening an organic pizza place.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
We have lots of opportunity for pizza in the area. It's really fun.
And it's actually already open, so.
Fantastic. Well, I would move approval.
All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Thanks, Shelley. All right, item 9A4 is a zoning case at 1520 South Mustang Road. It's in Ward 3, Larry.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Has anybody signed up? There are no protests on this, but this is such an exciting project. I'd like to just take a few minutes and allow the applicant to share what this is. This is going to be out in the area where the turnpike currently ends, where the turnpike spur will be created in time in the future to go over to Southwest 152nd. So if you would, David, what this is all about.
Yeah, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. Also with me is Dr. Sam Corey, who owns this property. This is a project that we spent a lot of time working not only with the Planning Commission, but also the neighbors. We had several neighborhood meetings, and ultimately what we came to was an exciting project that everybody was able to get behind. As the councilman indicated, right now the turnpike actually runs through the property right here, but as everybody knows, the turnpike's being rerouted, and we've actually accounted for that in our plans and in our right-of-way. So we worked closely with the turnpike. Initially, they had submitted a protest letter, worked with them to reroute our master design statement so that they're now fine with it. So what we've provided for is a mixed use. You know, we have devoted different tracks to different types of uses. You could have a large hospital user here, a large big box there, perhaps a large movie theater here, all of which the neighbors, frankly, were very excited about to the north. The last thing that the neighbors asked us for is a masonry wall where it abuts the R1 single family. My client agreed to do that. Once we agreed to do that, the neighbors were on board, as well as Planning Commission. So it's a large project. It's approximately 200 plus acres. So it's one that when you have the new traffic with the turnpike, we think could be a wonderful sales tax generator for the city. Planning Commission was unanimous in their support for this and recommended approval, and we'd ask for the same.
Okay with it?
OTA, yes, sir.
Turnpike Authority okay with it? Or
yes. Originally, we had not carved out what they need, but we changed our map and specifically asked for their legals and carved out exactly what they need, and we planned our project around their project.
Yeah. Seems very dense.
It has an opportunity to provide a lot of wonderful retail. You obviously have State Highway in Mustang. You're going to have an on-ramp, off-ramp right here. And what the Planning Commission was concerned about initially was all the different uses. And so what we've done is we've broken this PUD into 5 different tracks, with each track having very pared down uses, very specific uses, so you don't have kind of carte blanche across the whole thing. We probably had 10 different meetings with individual planning commissioners, some multiple meetings, but that was their concern, that it was too dense. And so what we did was whittle it down. So track 1, when you look at the PUD, what it was really geared towards is hospital and medical type uses. Track 5 is geared more towards restaurant and some retail, and then you have more intense retail where you're along the arterials.
Is that a high school in there?
I believe it's a middle school.
Okay.
Middle school.
All right. Larry?
If there are no further questions, I move for approval.
Second. All right. Cast your vote. Passed unanimously. Item 9A5 is a zoning case in Ward 5 at 8937 South May Avenue. It's currently C3 Community Commercial and CUP 44 Community Unit Plan Overlay, and it will all be put into a new SPUD if approved. David?
Thank you, Your Honor. Is the applicant here this morning? I have a couple of questions concerning this, and it may not be anything that we can actually regulate. It relates to how the trucks are maintained, the appearance of the facility. Bob, can you give us some guidance on this matter?
The location wouldn't allow maintenance of the, I mean, you can do common maintenance, but any kind of engine repair or brakes, that all would have to be done off-site.
Yes.
And right now, he's just moved. In fact, right now, he's not storing them where he's proposing. He's south of the building, but he just plans to line the trucks up in that one area to the north.
Yeah, because currently, I mean, he's providing this service, this rental service at this location now, and the trucks are a little bit disarray. Is there a way we could defer this for 2 weeks so I'd have an opportunity to speak with the gentleman a little bit more?
We'll make
in-depth?
contact with him and tell him to contact your office.
Yeah, so I'm not opposed to him expanding his sources of revenue, you know, that's fine. I just want some assurances that the property will be well-maintained and the trucks will be, kept in order and just try to make the area as attractive as possible. So if we could defer this for 2 weeks, please.
All right, do we have a second? Cast your votes. Item is deferred 2 weeks. June 13th.
Thank you.
All right, item 9A6 is a zoning case in Ward 7 at 2813 Southeast 44th Street. It's currently O2 General Office and R1 Single Family Residential, and it would be put into a new SPUD. John?
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak? I see the applicant is present. There was one protest, but the protest has been withdrawn. The Planning Commission did approve it. I move for approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 9A6. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9A7 is a zoning case in Ward 4 at 7500 South Anderson Road. It's currently RC Rural Commercial and an AE2 Airborne Environs 2 district, and it would be put into a new SPUD. Todd?
Thank you, Your Honor. Is there anyone signed up to speak against this? No? Okay. Your Honor, I think I can go ahead and move for approval on this.
All right. Is there anyone here hoping to speak against this item? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. All right, item 9B is here today to close a section of South Midwest Boulevard, and this item was deferred earlier. Todd?
Is the applicant or anyone here to speak for this item yet? No? Your Honor, I'm going to make a motion that we move this out again for 2 weeks to June 13th.
Okay. All right, motion and a second on item 9B. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9C is 3 items that have come to us from the Traffic Commission. The first establishes some parking regulations on the west side of North Walker. It's in Ward 6, Meg.
Yeah, Mayor, essentially these 3 items all relate to parking in and around the Edge development at 13th and Walker. The request is that we put in metered spaces to better make the spaces more available on a regular basis to increase the turnover for future retail.
All right.
I would move approval of C1.
Second.
All right, we have a second. We're voting on 9C1. Passes unanimously. Item 9C2 is also in Ward 6, and this is on South Hudson Avenue.
Yes, this is related to, and actually the request from the MAPS Oversight Committee related to the downtown park. And similar experience, we want to regulate the 90-degree angle parking and parallel spaces that are being constructed on the South Hudson side of the park and establish 2-hour parking meters. I would move approval.
Second.
All right, we're voting on item 9C2. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9C3 is also in Ward 6, and this is in the area of the park as well, is it not?
This is on the west side of South Robinson, from Southwest 3rd to Southwest 7th Street, also for 2-hour parking meters. Move approval.
Second.
All right, cast your votes on 9C3. Passes unanimously. Item 9D is a public hearing regarding dilapidated structures. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9D? Yes, come on up. Good morning.
Good morning.
You might pull the microphone down.
Sorry,
and then
good morning.
we'll need your name and address for the record.
It's Property Management Services for John Moon at 105 Southwest 28th Street.
Okay, we need your name and address.
Oh, it's Dusty Summers, and it's my address is 1132 North Ellison.
Okay, and which property were you wanting to discuss?
105 Southwest 28th Street.
Okay.
That property had a fire, and so we've secured the property, and we're going to go ahead. And we're waiting on one more piece of paper from the insurance company, and we're going to go ahead and get it either fixed back up or we're going to tear it down. We're kind of in limbo.
Okay, Charles, or no, you're not Charles. I didn't said your name before I looked up.
David Owen. We'll be happy to work with her.
Okay, if you'll just work with staff, should we leave this on?
Yes.
Okay, we'll leave it on the docket, but that'll give you 30 days to kind of work with staff, and as long as you're working with them, you're not going to have any issues with this.
Okay.
But just don't hesitate or fail to work with them, otherwise it'll be torn down.
Yes, and we don't want that.
All right.
Okay, thank you so much.
Do we have a motion on 9D? No. Okay, motion on 9D? All right. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. All right, 9E, a public hearing regarding unsecured structures. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9E? All right, how about a motion here? Cast your votes. It passed unanimously. Item 9F is a public hearing regarding abandoned buildings. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under 9F? All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9G is a public hearing regarding the removal of property from the abandoned buildings list. Anyone here hoping to speak on any of these items? All right, cast your votes on 9G, and it passes unanimously. Item 9H is a public hearing. This is an annual look at our fire department's capital needs and the sales tax. This is the 3/4 cent sales tax, is it not?
That's correct.
Okay, the 3/4 cent sales tax passed by the voters in the 1980s. Doug?
Yeah, exactly. These resolutions govern both the fire and police sales tax. There's two items before you today. These are part of the journal entry of judgment. They're required by that was entered in 1993 to make sure all the expenditures from the sales tax funds are consistent with the ballot language that was approved by the voters in 1989. The ballot contains several specific projects as well as the ability to add other projects to provide new, additional, increased, or improved service or facilities. You'll see the first two projects for both fire and police are what we call listed projects, while the remaining projects are considered other projects. At the end of each fiscal year, this auditor's office reviews all the expenditures from the fire sales tax funds, ensures that they're all made in conformance with the resolution that you're passing today, and that any exceptions are reported. That report is presented to council each year around December. So for fire, the resolution authorizes 202 uniformed firefighter positions and 6 civilian positions for a total of 208 positions funded by the fire sales tax fund. That's no change from the current year. There's also funding for recruit overage positions so that recruit academies can begin in advance of expected retirements, allowing vacant positions to be filled more quickly. The fire compensation project is what we refer to as the wage adjustment. One component of the police and fire sales taxes was to pay for higher salaries and benefits, and the specifics of how that payment to the general fund is calculated, that's spelled out in the journal entry of judgment, and the change in the amount each year is driven by the growth in sales tax. So since sales tax is decreased in the current year, the wage adjustment will also decrease in next year. The other projects include firefighting tools and equipment, advanced life support, a wellness project, computer upgrades, fire facility repairs, and funding to supplement the bond funds allocated for remodel or construction of fire stations. And the total proposed budget for the fire sales tax fund for FY17 is $44.4 million, and all of the expenditures in the fund must conform to the resolution before you. The list of police projects remains basically the same as in the current year. It funds 219 uniformed police officers and 31 civilians for a total of 250 positions. In police, there's also funding for recruit overages so that recruit academies can begin in advance of the full number of openings. Other projects include maintenance for police vehicles, police compensation or wage adjustment project, capital improvements at police facilities and supplies and equipment. The total budget for proposed budget for the police sales tax fund is $45.1 million. And of course, all expenditures there must conform with these resolutions as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
All right, so Doug's explanation covered both H and I, and this is a public hearing, so if anybody has anyone to say about either of these items, now would be an appropriate time to raise your hand. All right, how about a motion then on 9H? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. And then 9I is the police side of the 3/4 cent public safety sales tax.
Move the item.
All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Thanks, Doug. All right, and 9J is the introduction of our GO bond program.
Mayor, if I could, the next 12 items have to do with both the GO bond issue and the sales tax issue that's been talked about for some time. The catalyst for the GO bond issue is the fact that we have a commitment to the NCAA to do some improvements. We passed a resolution a number of years ago when we had an agreement extension with the NCAA to do some improvements to the Softball Hall of Fame, and the time is now up for us to get started on those improvements. It's actually a capacity expansion out there. And we're at the end of the 2007 bonds. The 2007 bonds program lasted longer than we'd anticipated, primarily for two reasons. One, there was the interruption in the economy in 2010, the real estate bubble, if you will. And then the state legislature passed a law putting a 3% limit on the increase of residential properties. And because of that, our assessed valuation did not increase as quickly as it has in the past. So that's why it hasn't gone so fast, and that's why we're proposing to have a GO bond at this time. The sales tax is the reason it's having this discussion is it expires, the MAPS 3 expires at the end of 2017, and this would allow for an election in September, which is the last date we can have an election to continue with this sales tax without having a break in it. Now, primarily, I think we all know that over the years, the number one issue on our citizen survey has been road condition by a fair gap as we go forward. And you know, a lot of cities have this issue. Keeping up road infrastructure is an issue really nationwide. It's also been an issue in Oklahoma City for quite some time, off and on. What I passed out this morning is actually ordinance number 7. Ordinance number 7 was passed by the city council in Oklahoma City in 1890. And what it says is that each and every male resident of Oklahoma City between the ages of 21 and 50, except active members of regularly organized fire companies, is hereby required to perform each year between the first day of April and the first day of November 2 days' labor upon the streets and alleys and highways of said city.
Move approval.
But you can commute this by paying into the city treasury the sum of $2. So you could buy your way out of it. The city treasurer will then use those for street improvements. So there's different ways to look at it. I'm not proposing that we go into this, but I found it very interesting that was an issue well over 100 years ago, and that was a solution that they came up with.
A draft for street resurfacing.
But if you're a firefighter, you're out. So as we go forward, we put together a proposal on the GO bonds based upon a lot of work. You know, council has submitted projects to us over the last year or two. Staff has been putting together projects that we hear from people from neighborhood meetings or people that call in and have issues that are out there. There's a lot of projects, a lot of needs out there. This has been a fairly long and I think comprehensive approach to come up with the program. We've been putting the projects together for a year or two. In December of 16, we did have a council workshop and began talking about it. We had neighborhood meetings, multiple neighborhood meetings, more than one per ward, trying to get public input into our GO process. We've had surveys that have been out there. We've had online surveys that have been out there. A lot of ways to solicit information as we've gone forward. We had another council workshop on April 18th of this year where we had the kind of consensus that we will go with a 16 mil issue for 10 years on the GO bonds. And so that's what we're presenting today. It's a 16 mills, 10 years, so we're not increasing the tax rate at this point in time. I think everybody probably would like to see something shorter than 10 years, but to get the number of projects, then it appears that that's where the cutoff needs to be. The sales tax, the 1 cent sales tax is being proposed to be split into two segments. One would be 3/4 cent sales tax for 27 months that would raise about $180 million that would be put into primarily streets because the bond issues money is going to take a number of years and we're not going to have the impact that probably some of our citizens would like on that. So we're going to use the $180 million on streets, on sidewalks, on streetscapes, on bike lanes and bike transportation improvements, and on trails. And it's delineated what the percentage would be for those to help both transportation and to do the street improvements out there. The 1/4 cent sales tax is being proposed to be used for operations, for general fund operations. I think we all understand that our sales tax has been stagnant. Our general fund budget being proposed this year is essentially the same amount that it was 4 years ago. Why is our sales tax stagnant? There's a number of reasons, I think, primarily. I think there's a lot of studies that have been done that talk about society changing from a commodity-based society to a service-based society. And in Oklahoma, we don't tax sales tax on very many services. So because of that, that's one of the reasons it's gone down. The other, I think, major reason is the movement toward the internet. A lot of people are buying on the internet. Not all pay sales tax. Some do. If there's nexus or connection to the state, there is a payment of sales tax or a use tax. Amazon has recently started paying sales tax as reflected in this month's sales tax, so there's some benefit there. But there's a lot of companies that still don't. And then, of course, we're in the throes of a minor recession right now, although our economists said that it's coming back. But for the first two reasons, because of the changing of culture and because of the internet, I don't know if we can continue the service levels that we want. So we're proposing a quarter-cent sales tax, which would bring in initially $26 million a year, and we would use that, as is stated in there, as an intent by council to, one, provide public service relief for the city. We would unfreeze the 48 police positions that are out there that are still frozen in this year's budget and add an 81, which would get us to with what we've added over previous years, up to 200 officers, which was asked for in a study a couple of years ago. On the fire side, the intent would be to unfreeze the 21 positions that's intended for the southeast fire station and then provide additional positions for the new southwest fire station, which won't be immediate. That'll be a couple of years off. And also to restaff and reactivate Engine 51 downtown. And then we'll have money left over that can be used to enhance transit, to provide maybe, could be council discretion as we get on down the line, some additional weekend service or night service. It could be used for parks. It could be used for other things because, quite frankly, it isn't just public safety that's taken a hit on the decrease of revenues we've had lately. It's all across the board. You've seen each year how all departments have cut. And we need a couple more positions in IT. We need a couple more positions in personnel. I believe the city clerk even could use another position as we go forward. So there are a lot of areas that we've cut back in. And this will allow us to, not immediately, but to use that to fill some of the needs where we've cut back too far over the last 4, 5, 6 years because of the decline of the economy. So that's what we're proposing. The GO bond issue and it's paired with the 3/4-cent sales tax for 27 months, which will generate $180 million, and then a 1/4-cent sales tax to the general fund, which will generate $26 million a year initially. We've got a little bit of presentation to talk about the process. It'll start with Aubrey McDermott to talk about our process. Come on up, Aubrey. Followed by Eric Winger, and then finally by Craig Freeman.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Aubrey McDermott, Planning Director. I'm going to give you a little bit of background of where we've been and why we're here today, how we've gotten here today. As you know, this is a long process of determining how we're going to spend our 2017 bond funds. Last summer, we started in earnest thinking about this process involving a lot more community input than we have ever done before. We've done a comprehensive plan update in 2015. That comprehensive plan update taught us a lot of different methods that we can get better outreach and participation from our community, which we did apply to trying to get people to express what needs they had in the community. And back in the summer of 2016, we worked on this strategy. We worked with city departments. We held city council briefings. Moving into fall, we launched our public outreach process. We had a lot of information available on the website. We worked with partners, and we had Neighborhood Alliance and OU work with us on a neighborhood outreach strategy to get really down into the weeds at a grassroots level with our citizens. We held meetings throughout the winter with the public, and then in spring, when we gathered all the information from the community, we paired that information with the information that city departments have been keeping lists of needs and projects over the years. And we developed a methodology for analyzing this information and helping to determine what priorities we could be able to fund through the 2017 bond issue. So I wanted to give you a little background on the public outreach process. We had over 6,400 people participate through all the various methods that we were able to engage the community on the needs that they felt we had to fund in the 2017 bond issue. We had technical means like an app that people could submit projects through. We had online means and surveys. We held several different types of public meetings, and we did workshops around the city. We held open a survey online, and we had paper copies of the survey and ultimately got 4,400 resident surveys back. And we asked people how important it was to fund all of the different categories that could be funded through the bond prop. Every single one of the categories was rated important to the community. Of the ones that people rated the most important to fund, we asked people to tell us what their top 3 priorities were. And the top of the top priorities were streets, bridges, and traffic control, which is very consistent with every survey that we do each year to ask citizens what the needs are in the community. Parks and recreation facilities, and sidewalks, trails, and bicycle infrastructure, and police and fire were the top 4 of the top 3 priorities of everyone who took the survey. You can also see that evenly supported are police and fire facilities, economic development, public transit, and drainage. And then at the bottom of the list, but not to be understated, people, between 200 and 400 people listed libraries and city facilities in their top 3 priorities. What's remarkable about this list to me is that if you were to select your top 3 needs in the city, every single category of bond proposition was someone's top 3. So this just helps reaffirm to us that we are putting together a bond prop that really meets our community's needs. When we held the local meetings called Meetings to Go in neighborhoods and small districts, we were able to partner with the Neighborhood Alliance to help us distribute these around the city and target areas that maybe didn't have organized neighborhood associations to get input about specific projects and needs such as sidewalk, drainage, infrastructure like bicycle and bus stops in their neighborhoods. Over 1,300 residents and community volunteers and business owners completed these surveys, and 84 different neighborhood groups held these meetings. We also held the workshops across the city, which each one of you hosted in your own ward. We really felt like this was such a valuable process for us to engage with the community. Our city departments were there, department heads and staff from city departments. This was an opportunity for us to really have face-to-face conversations, in-depth conversations with people in the community. We were able to get a lot of feedback generated at those meetings, but we were also able to send people out to go back and tell their neighbors and tell their friends about the importance of the bond and to direct them to ways that they could submit their project ideas online. So overall, with all of these different methods of outreach, the public ended up submitting over 3,000 project ideas to the city for project needs. So staff took that information, we paired it with the list of projects that we'd been maintaining over the years, and we came up with a list of more project ideas and needs than we could actually fund in the 2017 bond issue. So we had to develop some sort of methodology or system to rank these projects to really match the community's needs. And one of the things we're really proud of is that since we did the 2007 bond issue, we have a lot more technology at our disposal. We have a great computer base of geographic information that we keep, as well as a construction management system that we're able to take all the projects, load those into the computer software, and take information that we know today and apply it towards a prioritization ranking criteria. One of the things that we were able to use for this bond issue was our comprehensive plan, which was updated in 2015. So I wanted to briefly touch on the comprehensive plan and the guidance that it provides. If I could just briefly read from the Oklahoma state statutes about what the comp plan is supposed to do, is guide the coordinated, adjusted, and harmonious development of the community in accordance with our present and future needs. It's supposed to take into consideration health, safety, general welfare, efficiency, economy for development, traffic, safety, fire, promotion of good civic design and arrangement, and the wise and efficient expenditure of public funds. So in this plan, we have a chapter dedicated to infrastructure and investment. What this does is it guides the decisions we make about where we spend our money so that they can benefit the greatest need at the maximum benefit of the community. So we applied this criteria in addition to other known factors for sorting the bond projects. The next slide shows examples of how we integrated information. The next slide, Christy. There we go. Information that we know with the criteria from Plan OKC. So, for example, when we evaluated the street widening projects, we were able to evaluate them based on the knowns of the pavement condition, how many work orders were generated on those streets, the traffic volumes on those streets, and the accident severity. So this really helped focus the needs in the community for street widenings. Same with street resurfacings. The other thing that Plan OKC helps to narrow down is development responsiveness. So this is where the comp plans focus on where development is being permitted, where we anticipate growth is going. We can really target infrastructure needs where we can accommodate present and future populations. Sidewalks, for example, had a lot of criteria from our comprehensive plan paired with technical information. So we can really put sidewalks where people will be using them and strategically where they will connect neighborhoods to schools, parks, bus stops, and to connect our existing sidewalk system. Planning Commission is required by state statutes to look at all these capital improvements projects to be in conformance with the comprehensive plan. We held several study sessions with the Planning Commission, and they provided a unanimous recommendation of approval to City Council last week. One of the things I wanted to say is that through going through this process, working with city departments, working with the community, I was very proud to be a part of this. I really feel like the process reflects the community's needs. And last week at the Planning Commission, our commissioners said some things that I thought you might like to see if you didn't watch the meeting. John Yokel, the current chair of the Planning Commission, did talk about how he's been involved in these things for 27 years, but this is really the first time that he's gone through such an in-depth process of looking at how the comprehensive plan and our capital improvements pair together. He also noted the cooperation among city departments that we're working together to really try to target solving issues and problems that are important to our community. He said it was a remarkable difference from 1990 to today. In addition, Janice Powers, who's the incoming chair of Planning Commission, talked about the public process and about how we learned so much from when we went through Plan OKC and had public engagement, about how to reach out to people for information and get feedback. And she felt like the technology and the tools for how we've been getting the input are still developing and improving, and that it's very, very important for us to use these tools to get public buy-in. And then last, Bob Bright in Ward 6 talked about how this plan for how we're allocating our funds, where the money's going to go and what it's going to be spent for, was indicative of how far the city has come. And he really applauded how we're listening to people who live here and what they want in the city. He said it was a marvelous, marvelous step for the city. So I wanted to share this with you. And then I will let Eric take you into the details of the bond program for each proposition.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As we proceed in the presentation, I think you've been provided a number of draft project lists, and so one of the items that you're actually going to find in your council packet today is the actual resolution that includes the list of recommended projects that comes from a lot of the process and a lot of the community input that Aubrey just mentioned. As originally presented to, what we're presenting today is a 16 mil 10-year package, and again, this millage would not increase the current taxes. The millage is an average. But again, the reason for the 10 years was to maximize that number of projects. So with a project list that originally was nearing about 2,000 total, I mean, we're able to take care of a lot of those projects, exceeding more than 300 projects in this individual package. This is a slide that we've actually presented at the previous workshops, and one of the things that has slightly changed, we've gone through intense review with Bond Council on laying out the 2017 bond issue, and it's actually still very similar to the 2007. You'll notice a little bit of change where it reads Downtown City Arena, Civic Center Complex, and City Maintenance Facilities Complex. We have actually increased the number of propositions from 12 to 13, making sure that that language is appropriate as we go out for the vote to the citizens of Oklahoma City. Now, the projects haven't changed. It's just in the categories in which they're organized in that document. So as I go through these next slides, I'm going to go through each of the propositions and summarize them very quickly. Again, you've seen a number of these projects already. This is the streets and sidewalks. Now, again, the sidewalks is not a separate proposition. It's going to be a subsection of the streets proposition. So all those necessary sidewalks in Oklahoma City are included in this package underneath streets, but it also includes residential resurfacing, widening, arterial resurfacing, street enhancements, and then sidewalks as well. And this is the total count for just the residential street resurfacing. So I'm going to break these into these subsections. We're able to analyze, using a lot of the data that Aubrey had mentioned, using our GIS system to prioritize and rank those projects. Predominantly, we had in the past just used our PCI, our condition index, and also our ADT, making sure that we've had a focus on the streets that are used the most, but that are also in the worst condition. But the list that you see before you today is one that takes into addition criteria such as cost per lane mile that it takes for us to complete maintenance. It takes into account accident severity and some other criteria that we've not traditionally been able to use without computer-aided assistance. The total funding for this package for residential street resurfacing is $135 million. I'm also going to note that there's about $70 million in unlisted funds that are available to all these subsections, but I've shown that here on this slide. Moving to arterial street resurfacing, 156 projects at $155 million. Again, you'll find that nearly 50% of this bond issue focuses on streets. And again, as we go back to the citizens' number one priority of the quality of city streets, that's where we've really ranked a lot of these projects very high and where the majority of this bond issue has been pointed. Moving to street widening, you're going to see on this list a total list of 17 projects. And again, we are still seeing growth in many areas of Oklahoma City. Probably one of the more quickly growing areas is in southwest Oklahoma City with the new Turnpike expansion. And so there are a number of projects that are listed here that will address those future needs for street widening. I will comment, though, that this is a number that's significantly less than what we saw in 2007. There were actually 48 widenings in the 2007. And so, again, it's not to say that the city is contracting, but again, we're focusing on streets, maintaining our current infrastructure, making sure that we make streets safe, and just keeping up with what we already have.
Eric, can I ask you about that? Because I think that's an important point. I've talked about it for years. I think that's the biggest mistake we made in 2007 is we had 48 street widening projects, almost none of which met the city's traffic per day count criteria. In these 17, how many of these 17 would meet the city's traffic per day count criteria of, I think you have it at 7,500?
You know, I would say not all of them today do meet that because the Turnpike hasn't been built. But I would tell you that there's been multiple components when we've looked at the 17 that are included. So one is there are a number of streets that are meeting that count now that do need to be widened just based on exceeding their 7,500 cars a day average daily traffic. But there's a lot of projects that are tailored towards the southwest Kilpatrick extension where we've actually got new interchanges being built in southwest Oklahoma City. And so as we get ready to upgrade the city's infrastructure to match that of the Oklahoma Turnpike Authority, obviously those roads do not have that traffic count today, so they would not meet today's criteria. But once that turnpike is constructed, they absolutely will.
So Aubrey listed some criteria for street widening, but an additional one is the Kilpatrick Turnpike extension and commitments we've made. I mean, I count 5 at a cost of $25 million.
I believe that's probably accurate, yes.
$25 million, that's more than we're spending on public transit, more than we're spending on libraries. To connect to the Kilpatrick. I mean, when were those commitments made? How did we make them? I mean, that seems like similar to the development that we saw earlier that Mick, you asked about the density. I mean, it seems like it is going to be a major impetus for sprawl and development along the Turnpike, and it seems like this investment is going to create sprawl on steroids.
So I think 2 responses. The council's previously committed to the expansion of Cerro Road. We've got 2 miles of Cerro Road that are being expanded with partnership with OTA. So we are basically funding that expansion at 50% of the total cost as a part of that project. And so those projects on Cerro Road have been included as a part of those. The ones that aren't specific to OTA, but we have to align ourselves with Plan OKC and the growth models, which is a part of the comprehensive plan, are going to be around those new interchanges. So clearly, when those new interchanges are constructed by OTA, and their schedule is to have the Turnpike constructed in 2020, 2021, we're going to need to be ready as Oklahoma City to expand the city's infrastructure in those areas too. Right now, they're 2-lane rural sections, no curb, no gutter. They're going to be set on a full interchange, and so these projects address that need.
They're that, and they're already getting complained about a lot, like even without the Kilpatrick Turnpike. So
there are some additional projects.
I'm certainly not an advocate for street widenings, but if there's anywhere in the city that needs it, it's that sector.
So again, we've used the best available data. We've used the best available information that we have today, the partnerships that we're creating either with the state or Oklahoma Turnpike Authority to make those recommendations to you as the council. Move to the next category, street enhancements. And again, as we continue to look at quality of life in Oklahoma City and we continue to look at Plan OKC and supporting a lot of the components of Plan OKC, you'll see here Bike Walk OKC as we continue to do bike lanes and street enhancements with new lighting and features throughout the city. Looking at complete streets again, there's 16 projects at $29.3 million included in this bond issue. Moving to sidewalks, there's 20 projects, and this will be the last of the subsections of streets at a total cost of $18.7 million. This again aligns with Plan OKC and the Bike Walk OKC plan. You see that it connects neighborhoods to schools, parks, bus stops, and also to commercial districts.
Eric, one more question before you leave streets. How long, if you're not investing in concrete, you're just using asphalt, how long do you expect these resurfacing improvements to last? It seems like we could spend almost a limitless amount and maybe not convince certain members of the public that the streets are good because they do degenerate so fast. We made improvements on North May that were very much needed, but in 3 or 4 years you're already seeing significant breakdown along those mile-long improvements.
So I would say on a traditional street where it's milled and overlaid, and of course this depends on the amount of material that is milled and removed and the amount of material that's placed as the overlay, but you could extend a life of a street 10 to 15 plus years. Now on residential streets, I would say that we could probably get more like 20 years out of a mill and an overlay on a residential street. But yes, I think probably the heavy use arterials like May, Penn, and Western, they have to be milled and overlaid much more often than a lesser traveled street.
So these investments will need to be redone in as soon as 10 years, 10 to 15 years.
Possibly on the highest use streets. So I will go back to, as we look for future plans, one of the reasons that we approached the council on making sure that we had adequate unlisted funds in the category for streets for this example, $70 million just to take care of some of those unknowns, things that we don't know today but that we know that are going to be possible really in the lifetime of this next 10 years of this bond program.
So do you have a sense of how many lane miles you're adding through this bond project that will be additional streets that we need to add to the maintenance?
Well, so it would mostly just be the widened streets only, the 17 locations where we're widening the street. The rest will be the existing infrastructure.
Okay. Thank you.
We go back just one really quick.
About a mile apiece, and we're adding 2 lanes. It could be 34 miles.
Thanks.
If we look at this map, this is just as a reference to kind of summarize the streets and sidewalks components. So if you look at the different colors, you'll see the mix of the projects. The orange is the residential resurfacing. The red is the widening projects, the blue is the arterial resurfacing, the green is the street enhancements, and then the purple is the sidewalks. So you'll see that there's a citywide approach that was taken to increasing and improving the infrastructure throughout the city. Moving to bridges, we have nearly 590 bridges in our city infrastructure, and some of them have come into the need of repair. Now we do inspect those every other year. All of the bridges in Oklahoma City are safe, but we do have 14 that we're presenting to you on this list today that are in need of advanced maintenance or possible replacement. And so this $26.8 million that's being presented will address the needs of those 14 bridges. And this is a map of those locations, and you'll see that they're also throughout the city in general areas.
Eric, one question. So you have a $5 million pedestrian bridge over Northwest Expressway at Wilshire?
Yes.
Is that related to the trail? How did you decide? We've had lots of pedestrian.
Yeah. We actually have a 2007 bond issue project that also includes some funding for that crossing of Northwest Expressway. But what we're finding is that it's not adequate to make that a full project. We're also starting to see that there's a desire to make it more iconic. And so one of the opportunities of this bond issue is going to be able to add additional funding to the existing 2007 project to have it completed with the new scope that's been conceived. So, but it is for the pedestrian trail that's in that area.
Okay, thanks.
Moving to traffic control, we have 20 projects that are being presented One of the biggest projects in 2007 as part of traffic was the Intelligent Traffic System, the ITS, which was completed last year. So all of the city's 750 signalized intersections have been upgraded with modern hardware and software, and we're able to do a lot of things with traffic management that we haven't been able to do before. But it doesn't stop there, and so as we look forward into the next 10 years, there are actually additional projects that are needed. The majority of the 20 projects that are on this list are intersections that currently have been approved by the Traffic Commission that warrant new signals. So this list generally is those projects awaiting funding to have the signals added to the city system. These are those locations of traffic control, and again, they're located in various areas throughout the city. As we move to drainage and drainage control, I think many will be very familiar with, we've experienced a number of historic flooding events between 2010 and 2015. We had 2 500-year events and 3 100-year events, which helped uncover a lot of needs across the city for various drainage improvements. And so here is a list that's based on flood data, flood costs, a lot of those citizen complaints and information that we received, 17 drainage control and 4 stormwater control projects, $42 million for drainage, $14.2 for stormwater. And again, you'll see we have some unlisted funds designated in this section to address future needs, things we may not know today. And this is a map of those locations. And again, you'll see that they're throughout the city, but again, this is based a lot on the information that we received over the last 5 years with those historic events. Moving on to parks and recreation. Again, as we continue to improve existing parks facilities, making sure that we keep up with the city's infrastructure, there's also growth in the city that we mentioned. So there's new parks, parklands, and facilities, public golf, and new trails throughout the city as a part of this parks package. There's 19 total improvements, 5 trails projects, and here you'll see the breakdown in that funding. $15 million for park, $72 for new parks, $28 for golf, $8.4 for trails, and again, some enlisted funds to address that quality of life, and again, maintaining the city's park system, but then growing with those areas of growth as well. These are those locations that you'll find, and they're located in green. Again, many are new, but then you'll also see the trail project locations identified in red.
Can I ask you a question? How do we, so that's $28 million for golf clubhouses on top of the golf clubhouse investments that we made in the last few years. That's essentially equivalent to what we're spending on police in this bond, $30 million. It's more than public transit investments, more than libraries, bridges, traffic control. How did we do, how many brand new golf clubhouses do we need in the city? I mean, how do we come at that in terms of prioritization, $28 million?
You know, as we went out to the different workshops in the wards, you know, I would say the highest community input response that we received was for early wine golf and the request from the community for new clubhouse facilities at that location. So some of the response would be that we've also listened to the community in a lot of the response when we went out to the workshops and have been able to incorporate that as part of the bond issue.
But these are as much as you're spending on the senior wellness centers. These are $10, $11, $12 million a piece.
Yeah, these would be replacement facilities that would be along the lines of scope that you found with the recently completed Lincoln Clubhouse as a part of the 2007 bond issue.
And none of these can wait till the next bond?
Again, I think this is what's being presented to you based on some community input and some of the needs that we've heard. So I don't know that I could comment more than that just based on what we've received.
But I mean, I certainly know, I mean, you and I have been to countless neighborhood meetings about drainage that are going to be left off this bond, neighborhoods that are going to continue to flood. I'm just wondering, what do we say to those as you and I go to those neighborhood association meetings in the next years? When we're spending this kind of money on clubhouses?
Sure. So I think one of the things that we have to note, and I think, you know, this bond issue does not take care of all the city's needs. We are maintaining the active list of projects in all categories, whether it's streets, bridge, drainage, parks, police, fire. We anticipate over the next 10 years that additional funding may become available, whether we use ACOG or state grant funds for our street projects, whether there's other neighborhood initiatives that take care of additional sidewalks and trails. We do find that FEMA does sometimes support us through disaster aid, and we do receive monies for drainage projects. And so we're going to continue to monitor that very closely. And in projects that become critical, we will either use the unlisted fund categories or we'll use those other grants or other funds to make those projects happen. Moving to libraries. Again, as we continue our investment in quality of life in Oklahoma City, there's a number of library projects that are being presented to you. There's 4 total at $23.9 million. This is helping take care of improvements to several of the existing libraries and possibly an enhancement of additional. But again, this is, one of the items that was included in the 2007 bond issue. These are the locations of the libraries that are being presented to you for the 2017. Moving to the Downtown City Arena. Now, this is where the proposition list is changed slightly from what was previously presented. But as we look at the Downtown Arena, we've got a project to continue the enhancements to the arena over the next 10 years, remembering that it was originally constructed with the MAPS 1 initiative. Now, yes, it did go through a series of enhancements for the NBA improvements, but as we look forward into the future, we're proposing $8.8 million to continue to make that building very successful and competitive moving forward. The Civic Center, very similar to the arena. It was remodeled with a MAPS 1 initiative, and as we look forward, there's been a study done to propose the next round of improvements, $20.1 million, again, to make the Civic Center Music Hall very competitive moving into the future.
That wasn't all, was it? That was also some downtown buildings?
So we do have some other components that are in here that, in City Manager's correct. We do have Civic Complex, so this also includes some of the needs of this building, 100, the 200, and the 420 West Main buildings as well.
Yeah, so we put them all on the campus. The majority of the money is going to the Civic Center, but we do have some improvements to keep some of the other buildings in our campus up.
As we look at the City Maintenance and Facilities Complex, I think many of you will know this is the CMF. So this is our facility that's located at Southwest 15th and Portland. Again, constructed as a part of the 2007. It helped us house our street maintenance crews. It also helped us do our drainage maintenance. Our radio shop is located at that location. It is secure. It's also the site of the household hazardous waste. As we look forward into the future and as a part of the 2007, we're continuing to make improvements. We're relocating portions of parks, traffic operations, and future needs. And so we've proposed additional projects at that location, $13.1 million as we expand, improve, and construct the CMF facility. Moving to transit, again, as transit has remained a priority, we're looking at replacement buses, outside amenities, increasing accessibility to stops, and also part of just the expansion of transit citywide. There's 3 projects proposed at $20.4 million. And looking at economic and community development, $60 million is a part of this proposition. You'll see that the goal is to provide incentives for job creation and also affordable housing as a part of the 2017. Fire. Now, these next 2 is fire and police, and they do share a joint project. That joint project is a combined police-fire training center where a portion of the funds are located in the fire and the portion is in the police. We're also looking at replacement of existing stations as part of the bond issue. 5 projects for fire at a total $45.3 million. And then moving on to police, I mentioned the joint police-fire training center. The police portion is $30.8, but it also includes the relocation of the air support unit, which is currently located on Southwestern, the former downtown air park. This would relocate that to the briefing station near the Will Rogers World Airport. And so as we look at the final project list, this is the document that's included in the council packet today. You'll see a list of each of those projects by those different propositions, $967.4 million, 336 projects. Again, the bond has been structured to really maintain our existing facilities, 16 mills, 10 years. Again, I can answer any questions that you might have regarding my part of the presentation. You're welcome.
Brett?
Craig. Sorry. It's all right. All right. So we're going to take a look at the sales tax extension and look at the proposals that...
You'll have an opportunity. We haven't had the public hearing yet. Go ahead. Michael, I appreciate your input. We're going to do it my way. We'll have an opportunity for public input in a little bit. Okay.
So on the sales tax extension, this is the MAP sales tax will expire on December 31st, 2017. And as it expires, a proposal was introduced at the council workshop in April to extend that or continue at current tax rate. A part of that was a 3/4 cent sales tax. It would be a temporary tax for 27 months that would help to invest in improvements to fund a safer and more complete transportation network. The other portion of that was $0.25 to support city operations, to support basic city services, fire, police, and other city operations. The breakout of that, if you look at it, if we go for a 27-month tax, so the $0.25 is proposed to be a permanent tax because it would be supporting ongoing basic city services. The $0.75, and that would be estimated to produce about $26 million a year in the current year. As it starts in January for the next fiscal year, if it's approved, we would have a half a year of that tax. The dedicated tax would be for 27 months, and during that 27-month period is estimated, the $0.75 would produce about $180 million. And this would include continuing a portion of the $0.25 now would be permanent, the $0.75 would be temporary, and it would just continue that current rate that we have with the MAPS programs. Because these are two separate purposes, there are two separate votes. And so when we talk about we'll talk at the end about some of the items that are on for today and talk about why we have those, but it's because we have two separate issues, so we'll have two separate votes, and that requires the different agenda items. The capital projects portion allows us to address the highest priority of our citizens consistently since we've been doing a citizen survey. When the citizens are asked, where do we need to put additional resources, streets has been by far the top priority, and so it allows us to put emphasis there. It allows us to enhance the work that's been accomplished with the GO bond program, which includes the 2007 bond program, but the 2017 also, if that's approved, moving forward. And then it will be implemented consistently with existing plans like Plan OKC, like the Bike Walk OKC plan, as well as other studies for sidewalks and for trails. A Citizens Advisory Board will be established with the ordinance that's on for today, just like what we've had with the MAPS program. So we'd still have that citizen oversight that would continue to guide the capital improvements portion of the tax. There are two resolutions that are on today for the two separate taxes, the $0.25 and the $0.75, and there's resolutions on that show the council's intent for how those would be used. The first one on the capital projects would allow us to build a more complete transportation network to get people where they need to go safely. And at the breakout of that and working with Public Works and with planning and the feedback that we've received through the extensive public engagement process would put approximately 70% towards street resurfacing, or $126 million. So the amounts that are listed as the attachment, with the attachment of that resolution, are estimated amounts, assuming that we receive $180 million over that time period. Streetscapes would be $18 million. Sidewalks would be $18 million. Trails and bike infrastructure would be $9 million each. And then we've allowed for other additional projects, if additional funds are available, that would be consistent with the projects that are here and would still be under the oversight of the advisory board. The resolution that's on for council intent for the $0.25 permanent tax to support city operations includes police services, and part of that is to restore the 48 positions that were frozen as a part of the 2017 budget. And again, those are positions that have remained in the budget in terms of count of positions, but they aren't funded, so we can't fill those positions at this time. The hope was, as things improve with sales tax, we'd be able to add those back. But even with projected growth next year, we've dropped down far enough in our sales tax that in this next year's budget right now, the proposal would not be to restore those positions unless we have additional funding. We'd also add additional positions, proposing to add additional positions that would address the staffing study that was updated in 2012. So the goal would be from the 2009 period, the original study, up to, once this is fully implemented, to get up to 200 additional positions that would have been added. In the fire services area, it would restore 21 positions that were frozen, and those positions had previously been added to be able to address the staffing needs at the new Southeast Station that's funded through the 2007 bond program. And this will restore those positions. We would also restore the 15 positions that are eliminated with Engine 51 as a part of the FY18 budget, and then add 21 positions once we're at the point of building this station for the new Southwest Fire Station that would be funded also through the 2007 bond program. It also allows us the ability to address other areas where we've cut back in services with just other general city operations. And those would include park maintenance, code enforcement, inspection services, animal welfare, street maintenance. It would also allow us to look at other areas internally for internal support. Councilman Greenwell brought up the fact last week with IT services, that's a support service. No one really recognizes it from the outside, but it's a critical part of our operations, and supporting the operations and the services we provide to our citizens, as well as other areas like personnel, building management, fleet services, municipal counselor's office. There's many areas where we need support, but not only do we need to be able to restore some of the services in areas where we've had to cut back previously, but also to look at enhancing services. One of the discussions the council's had over time has been ways that we can enhance transit services, whether it's extending services into the evening or extending over to the weekend or adding additional routes. And so ability to be able to add services like in transit and other areas as our population grows, as our community grows, this would be an important step forward for us to be able to provide for those services. On the next slide here, I just wanted to summarize, because there are so many others, 12 items on today dealing with all that's been presented in the bond program. One is a resolution that introduces the general obligation bond program, has a list of projects, and directs staff to work with council to develop the documents that are needed to meet the requirements to get the GO bond resolution on for the election. There's a GOLT policy that's on that. With the proposal for the GOLT funding that would be included for economic and community development in the 2017 bond program, there will be a new policy that's been approved already by the Economic Development Trust, and it's before the council today as another item. And then there are 5 items each for the 2 sales tax propositions: the $0.25 to be permanent to support the ongoing basic city services, and the $0.75 to be 27 months to address those highest priorities of our citizens. And the items that we have on those, on the sales tax, are the ordinance that would establish the sales tax election, a resolution to authorize a proclamation to call the election, the actual special election proclamation, and then a resolution number 2, as noted as number 2, would be notifying the election board. And these are documents that are required by state law that we have to go through to be able to get this on for an election. And then final are the 2 resolutions of intent that I just briefly reviewed, showing the council's intent for how those sales tax funds would be used.
Then the next steps as we go forward. Next week, on June 6th, will be our final budget workshop that we will have. And then on June 13th, we will bring these items back again for public hearing and public consideration of those. And then we'll bring them back again the next week on June 20th with hopeful adoption of that day. Calling for the election would be on September 12th, and with the election on September 12th. So the 12 items again, we have the GO issue. And then the next item is on the strategic investment plan that includes affordable housing, the modifications that Craig mentioned, and then
is that Kathy's presentation?
Oh, Kathy's presentation. Yeah. 5 items on the 3/4-cent sales tax and 5 items on the 1/4-cent sales tax.
All right. Well, let's catch up on the agenda here. We've had a few presentations. If we go back to item 9H, we have a public hearing on the. We did that. We're at J, okay. So we have introduced the propositions and projects for the GO bonds, and we're about to establish a public hearing on June 13th. Michael, is this what you would like to speak on? This had to do with the presentation and listed the items on the GO bonds. The public hearing is on June 13th. I'd be glad to let you speak, though you came down today, as long as you keep your comments to under 3 minutes. Come on up.
Well, everyone. Thank you very, very much, council. Respectable people, you got a real one here today. Now then, simply because my county and my ward isn't being represented. Again, my name is Michael Washington, for the record, 2900 Northeast 18th Street, one and only. Now then, simply because my county and actually parts of my county and my ward isn't being represented properly, let me speak a little bit about this bond election issue for September. Isn't this interesting? Now then, I don't know the gentleman's name here because I came in a little bit late, but now it seems to me ridiculous measure to have $137 million for parks and recreation, Mayor, but are you ready for this one here? Let me tell you something about that there. citizens, as far as where I live, probably only ours, we have to be charged to even lease part of that park recreation on the northeast side of Edwards Park and various other parks on that side, which is Pitts Park. Now, you're going to tell me you're already so-called having $137 million earmarked for that department that you're going to take from me, the citizen, the poor person who wants to get together with his community and loved ones, and you're going to charge me to lease it. Come on, now, this is irate and ridiculous. Now then, let me further. Okay, then we have a downtown arena area for $8.8 million. Come on, man, are you serious? All these big, wealthy developers, all these high echelon groups of people with this money already. Where is this $8.8 million going? It's certainly come part of my taxes. Oh, yeah, I buy candy bars and cookies too, so I pay taxes too. Okay, now then. So you're going to try to tell me that according to the maintenance department, which you said is well secure, so now how do I get in as a citizen? $13.1 million for a maintenance security facility. Are you serious with me? Now then, and the great point you made, Mr. Shadid, this $28 million for a golf course of people, that represents the wealth. It has to be a golf course, $28 million? Are we really serious here? Let's get back to what the people of Oklahoma City really need. We don't need for the 1.1 of the nation's wealthy, which is part of that 1.1, not necessarily all of them here, but you're talking about a $28 million so I can go sip on a cognac or whatever I want to do. Okay, have fun with my parties in the restaurant. This is something that needs to be reconsidered. Because let me tell you something, this is money that's being not well spent, but spent for a small number of people so that they can have fun and with the big bill bellies. Oh, this was really great here, Bob. Who's next? This is utterly ridiculous. One more. $30.8 million for the police department. What? Let me tell you, I love that. But I have a big problem and concern when you got police officers controlled and manufactured and managed by the Fraternal Order of Police. This is a real problem that we have in Oklahoma. $30.8 million is not for additional police. It's to put more people down there to restrain the rights of African Americans. Still today.
Your 3 minutes is up, but you'll have a chance to talk in a little bit.
I'm certainly not finished.
All right, item 9J is the items that were introduced here, and we need a motion to pass item J. This is the resolution. All right, cast your votes. Item 9J passes unanimously. 9K is a presentation on the affordable housing aspect of the GOLT bonds and other aspects of the GOLT bonds. And Kathy O'Connor's here.
Good morning. In your packet today is a draft of the policy that was presented to the Economic Development Trust last week and approved by them for the general obligation limited tax bond program, which on the general obligation bond proposition on the ballot, it will be the economic development and community development proposition. Just as a reminder, in 2007, the citizens approved an authorization of $75 million for the general obligation limited tax bond program for the purpose of economic development, primarily focused on job creation. Prior to the election in December, we brought to the City Council a policy that outlined how the funding would be spent. So this item before you today is very similar to what we did 10 years ago when we initially brought forth the economic development proposal to you. Just as a reminder, the $75 million bond authorization funded what we called the Strategic Investment Program. It was focused on the creation of primary jobs, quality jobs that paid over the average salary in the Oklahoma City MSA. To date, we funded over $63 million has been allocated to companies through SIP agreements approved by the Economic Development Trust and the City Council. Over $45 million of that has been paid to companies for earned incentive payments. If you remember, the program is very much based on pay for performance and a high level of accountability and transparency. So we pay the money as the jobs are created over time. We have the expectation to create over 11,000 jobs through the $63 million that's been allocated to date. Over $682 million in payroll will be anticipated to be created. and over $900 million in capital investment. In 2012, we brought forward an amendment to the GOLT bond policy to address some areas where we felt that we needed greater clarity and authorization in order to make sure that we didn't miss any economic development opportunities that came our way. The 2012 amendment maintained the principal use of the bond proceeds for job creation, but it also expanded the potential use and permitted purposes under the policy for programs such as infrastructure expansions, a leverage fund, which is basically a revolving loan or a loan program, a program to provide funding for land assembly if necessary, and for emerging technologies to help smaller, high-tech companies take advantage of the city's program. The 2017 GOLT bond program carries forward many of the original initiatives that were set forth in 2007. It incorporates the basic guiding principles that I mentioned earlier, high degree of public accountability and transparency, and focuses on pay-for-performance incentives. It contains guiding principles and clear program characteristics which establish the minimum but flexible thresholds for participation in the program and receipt of incentives and loans. And one thing that is definitely the case about this program is that we wanted to be transparent to citizens, but we also wanted to be clear and consistent for the companies and the projects that we deal with. And I think that's one of the really good things that we've been able to accomplish through this program. It continues to emphasize the use of the GOLT bond program for primary job creation and new-to-market jobs as authorized in the 2012 amendment. One of the things that we have discussed and proposed adding to the program for 2017 is an affordable housing component. We are recommending to allocate $10 million of the $60 million from the GOLT bond proceeds to be used towards affordable housing. This would be a new program under the GOLT bond statute designed to support economic development and community development through the creation or expansion of affordable housing throughout Oklahoma City. And right now we've set a threshold of up to $1 million could be allocated annually, with the provision that of course could be changed if the council so desired. Just a few things about affordable housing in Oklahoma City that I wanted to go over this morning. First of all, Oklahoma City it experiences a high degree of affordability for most people. Most people, it's a very affordable market, but for some, they're becoming more and more cost burdened and spending a more substantial portion of their income towards housing. Low-income renters are the most vulnerable, and currently the rent growth environment in Oklahoma City is one of the fastest growing in the country. Some of that is probably because we started out at a very, very low level and we're to some degree catching up, but we have seen substantial rent growth throughout Oklahoma City and not just downtown. We have areas of high opportunity in Oklahoma City, areas where there are better schools, better transportation options, better employment options that we need to make sure that we disperse affordable housing throughout those areas. And finally, existing resources to address affordable housing programs are very limited and are declining. There is a federal low-income housing tax credit that is available. It is not used as extensively in Oklahoma City as it is in other communities. There is a state affordable housing tax credit, but it is not available in Oklahoma, Cleveland, or Tulsa counties. And finally, the city has used CDBG, home funds, the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, and TIF to provide resources for affordable housing. But again, these resources are limited. Some are declining, and almost all of them are only to be used in a very strict geographical area. So for the 2017 GOLT bond program, we would recommend allocating, some of this is kind of repetitive, sorry. For the 2017 GOLT bond program, we're recommending allocating $10 million of the proceeds to an affordable housing program. Staff will develop further policies for council consideration, setting forth the eligibility criteria for use of the funds, allocated to the affordable housing program. It's expected that the program would support affordable or mixed-income housing developments, assist with the location of affordable housing in high-opportunity areas, support housing developments for severely low-income residents, and help fill the funding gap for supportive and transitional housing. We've also convened a group of several entities involved in affordable housing, including the state, the Oklahoma Housing Finance Authority, the City County Housing Authority, and the City Planning Department, my staff, to develop additional strategies to address affordable housing on a more comprehensive level throughout Oklahoma City and Oklahoma County. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
All right. Questions on the affordable housing issue?
Certainly, I applaud including the affordable housing. I guess the question is, what does affordable housing mean? You have 23% of the greater metro area's population living under the poverty line. I remember that because it's LeBron James and Michael Jordan's number. So 23%, 1 out of 4 people. But you look at the affordable housing we talked about in the Wheeler District, none of those 23% are going to be able to live in what we were calling affordable housing. So is there anything that you envision for that 1 out of 4 people that are living below the poverty line, or is this?
I think that that's one of the things we need to bring back to City Council. First of all, we want flexibility to address affordable housing projects at all levels of the income spectrum. There are some tools available for people who are at 30% of, it's called average median income or average household income. The Housing Authority has tools available to help that 30% level. CDBG and other federal programs, the Low Income Housing Tax Credit Program, for example, help people that make between 30 and 60%. In some areas, it's that 80 to 120% of AMI who are most challenged in finding housing. So I think we have to have a program that allows us to support mixed income projects, first of all, and has resources at every level of the income spectrum. We also have a great need for transitional housing for the homeless, for people with disabilities. This program could help with all of those different kinds of issues. And that's the policy that we need to bring back to you. So, I think there's a balance between, do we use this to help fill the gap in areas where there are other incentives available, and do we use it in cases to complement it when those incentives just aren't quite enough?
I think as excited as I am about that, I'm continue to be disappointed by the emphasis on the strategic investments program, emphasis on job creation that seems to target large multinational corporations. And when I go through Exhibit 1, it seems like we're going to continue that policy. It states that the SIP will be available for projects that create a minimum of 50 full-time jobs or have a minimum annual payroll of $1.75 million. So is that the company has a payroll of $1.75 million or an additional payroll of?
That they will be adding $1.75 million.
So these are not going to be small businesses that create the bulk of the jobs in Oklahoma City. These are going to continue to be the $7 million we gave to Continental Energy, the $3 million we gave to Chesapeake, Boeing, Baker Hughes, on and on. Large corporations would still seem to be the focus. And then we have a carve-out just in case the SIP is intended to have the flexibility to address a prospect that does not meet all the criteria but has a high-status company that creates high-paying jobs or is otherwise considered as a high-quality company of distinction to Oklahoma City. My concern is that if you just throw out a cash that isn't obligated to a certain project like the rest of the GO bond, that the strongest among us are always going to get that money, that the weakest and disenfranchised will not get that money, that the strongest members of the community always tend to find a way to get that, and this seems to be tailor-made to allow them to get the bulk of the funds just as they did the bulk of the 2007 funds.
I think the program has the flexibility to address those small business job creators. I do, and we've had several conversations with the Chamber of Commerce about working to develop programs that could use some of the other components of the strategic investment program to help support, or of the GOLD bond program. Really, the strategic investment program is that 50-job, large, high impact. I mean, really, those are the employers that have the biggest impact on our overall economy. But I do think the policy is written in a way that we have enough flexibility to address small businesses as well. And we've been having several discussions, because we know that this is a concern of all the city council, not just yours, to help support small businesses. And we'll continue to work on that and try to bring something forward for before the September election. But certainly, we always have the opportunity to amend this policy and address programs that could help small businesses more specifically.
You know, it's interesting, in Tulsa's Vision 2025 program, when they did economic development, there's investments in education. Can you use this in any way for education in the city?
The way, I don't know that from a legal perspective. I don't have the state statute memorized, but from the way we've focused this, it's on economic development and community development through the affordable housing program.
What about for the Convention Center Hotel? Could you use some of these funds for the Convention Center Hotel?
I don't know. I mean, I think theoretically, yes, but you know, that would obviously be a council decision.
It's not anticipated.
Not anticipated, but legally you could, if you had a shortfall, you could access these GOLD bond funds for the Convention Center Hotel.
We could.
I would, I'm still hoping that Bill Schapper, we've done a poll, we've asked some of these questions. I'd like him to come to the public hearing, and I think he can share a lot of data. He polled a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today. He polled this, the idea of giving large corporations, and you can read the question and decide if you think it's leading or not, but the idea of giving large corporations this kind of incentives is not popular with the people of Oklahoma City. It polled by far the lowest. It had 35% approval, but only 6% was strongly approved. 29% is somewhat approved. So if you combine the two, it's 35% approval. I mean, it has an uphill road, and I think the affordable housing is a good first step, but something that includes more than just the large multinational corporations, I think, would make it more popular with the people of Oklahoma City.
I have just a couple comments. I disagree with this whole, similar to how Ed's articulated, but I oversimplify things sometimes, and so to me, I disagree with this whole idea of job incentives on a philosophical level, in that I don't think that the city should be going into debt to pay companies for creating jobs. And that's essentially what the SIP program does. And so, because to me, whenever, you estimate that there was 11,000 jobs that were created through the SIP program from the 2007 GOLD. I would argue that most, if not all, those 11,000 would have been created anyway, because these businesses, they need workers, and if they're not just going to create jobs just because a city is going to pay them, and if those companies don't create those 11,000 jobs, another company will create the jobs that are needed. And so for me, to incentivize job creation really is what we're doing in the other aspects of the bond program, of making this city a better place to live through street resurfacings, through better parks, and everything else that we've addressed within the GEO bond program. So for that, I'm going to vote against this one. And I would just, if anybody else agrees with me, you don't have to tell me now, but I would like to amend J whenever we get to the final vote to take out the economic development part completely, or at least make it smaller, or amend what we actually are going to be using it for. So with that, I'm done.
All right. Any other comments from council or questions for Kathy? All right. Item K, I'll need a motion. Okay, come on up.
Thank you. I'm a citizen too. I pay taxes like everybody else. Thank you. My God, because I expressed my opposition to this farce of delivery. Now then, Galt, you two gentlemen, you've gained a strong or left arm for me. Now then, Ms. O'Connor, this is all a deliberate scheme and plan for you to put money into the pockets of your friend in high development. You spoke about $10 million. I think you forgot that I was here doing your economic development trust hearing. That $10 million is not for the Affordable Care Act in and of itself. However, on the other hand, it is designed to put money into the pocket of contractors related to that. Now, let's go back to that hearing. If anybody think I'm lying and just making something up, go ahead and get the record from the city manager's office. Excuse me, city clerk's office. Yes, ma'am. So again, let me make me out to be a liar, because there's one thing, Michael Washington isn't a liar. You can best believe I'll back up and stand firmly on my convictions. Now, you also stated that you've spoken with the Chamber of Commerce regarding touching basis for the low business people. Come on, Miss O'Connor, who do you think you're fooling? Again, your whole idea is to keep the money downtown for big business. Our whole problem today is that this tax breaks that's given to the windfall people, oil and gas, to Devon Energy, Chesapeake and those people like that. That's why we have such an economy in such a devastating, troubling condition today, because we're asking the taxpayers to pay for these people themselves, because, again, I'm big and almighty. I want to sit in my club and shoot a golf club while I drink my margarita. These are things that we need to start looking at, I mean, very specifically. Now, you're talking about this GOAT, general obligation tax, limited tax. Are you serious, kidding me? Okay, that's just another way, Miss O'Connor. Let me tell you this. I know you have a problem with citizens because you have a problem when I come and talk to you, because, you know, I know how to ask the questions related to a lot of things. That's why you don't want me in your office down there. Let's put that out on a record, too, while we're at it. And you trying to tell me you're spending my funds and you don't want Michael Washington in the place that you are renting? Are you kidding me, Mr. President? Not hardly. Now, let me tell you also here, too, okay, because I'm not going to get along just to get along. That ain't what I do. People send me to speak. I'm going to speak for my people, just like you speak for yours. Hello, everybody. Now, and you also said here that you're going to create jobs, 11,000 jobs. Now, again, you didn't say who those jobs are going to be targeted for, but we already knew. And you want to know why you didn't embrace for the African-American community or small business? Because, you know, a lot of us today have mom-and-pop businesses over there, little bitty restaurants, okay? Maybe jump over the gym, you know, something that small, which is inconvenient to you. You should not be in control about who get money. You should really represent everybody, lady. The taxpayers' money that you got don't belong to you. Matter of fact, you're getting a paycheck from these people. And you're getting some of my paycheck money. Because, again, I buy cookies, candy bars, and all that stuff, too, like everybody else. Now you also talk about, let's see, yeah.
Michael, your time's up.
Oh, my God. That's why I have to rush it.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
All right, need a motion on 9K.
I would make a motion to approve.
Is there a second? All right, cast your votes. It passes 5-2. All right, item 9L begins our series of ordinances that have to do with the proposed sales tax. We'll start with the 3/4 cent. Jim, you want to have a presentation on the 3/4 cent first, or are you combining them both into one?
Craig made that presentation early on, so we'd be happy to answer any questions regarding the resolutions and ordinances.
Okay.
Can I have a thought or questions? I think I see this as obviously a radical departure from the previous MAPS programs that made transformational projects. We started out because we lost a corporation's business. We wanted to develop a place that people wanted to live, or corporations wanted to come and have their employees live at. Now, if you are someone who's waited for 24 years for the MAPS program to come out into the neighborhoods and make improvements to your neighborhoods, I think many people will be disappointed that all we give them is 2 years and streets. Nothing else. It's maps for streets. I mean, I see that in the exhibit we're trying to call it the Community and Neighborhoods Enhancement Program, but I don't see that. I mean, Bill Crum called it Maps for Streets on on Friday, and I think that's a more accurate portrayal of what it is. It's restricted to streets. I think if you poll this 25-75 split, 75 for streets, it has approval. It has 58% approval in the poll that we commissioned, which is not bad. It's not bulletproof, but it's not bad. But that's if you just ask the people thumb up or thumb down on this, which is traditionally the way we've done it as a city. We just throw something to the people and we say, do you want this or not? But if you dig deeper and you ask them, what do you want? If you could play mayor for a day, what would you put in maps for neighborhoods, or what would you put in a community and neighborhoods enhancement program? They do not say that they would restrict it only to streets. They want other things. They want operations and maintenance dollars. They want parks amenities. They want transit. They want pothole repairs. They want police and fire. They do not want just streets. And so the thesis that the people of Oklahoma City will only let you do other things once you've taken care of the streets, I think is a false premise. And I don't think you're going to get citizen satisfaction that much higher if you take a quarter of a penny of this and do it on something else. I just don't think it makes that much difference because the streets deteriorate so fast and we have so many lane miles. There are basically two things that you could change to this proposal that would cause the approval rate among the people to skyrocket, 250%. They would approve it 2.5 times to 1 over this approval. The first is that you would recognize that this quarter of a cent for operations is not enough to make any meaningful difference outside of police and fire. I think police and fire have asked, they've said we need a full quarter penny, and essentially they've gotten it in this proposal. You have 186 new police and fire positions that would cost roughly $19 million. You add the streetcar and the new parks maintenance, basically the operations and maintenance for the MAPS 3 projects that we don't have a funding mechanism for, and that's basically your 26 million. You have another year where you fell 7 million short in sales tax receipts like we did this year, and not only are no other departments getting any money with that 0.25%, but they're still going to be decreased. So the idea in our statement of resolution that we were very specific on police and fire about the number of positions, but on everything else in just the most general terms that we're going to try and do street maintenance, public transportation, park maintenance, recreation services, animal welfare services, code enforcement, court services, and other support services, it sounds good, but in reality there is no money for that once the police and fire positions and the new things coming online eat up that 0.25%. So if you increased it to 0.5 penny for operations, actually I think the whole penny should be operations, just bring it into the general fund and then the council distributes it. But if you're going to do it this way, 0.5 penny would allow you to meet all your police and fire obligations and then make all your other departments whole. And that's the way you could make the biggest community and neighborhood enhancement impact to all the neighborhoods. You could have park amenities, you could have transit improvements, you could reverse the cuts that we've made in the years past. You're not going to be able to do that with this 0.25%. We're going to continue to live reacting to funding crises, and we're not going to be made whole. So that's the first thing you could do, is increase operations and maintenance to 0.5 penny. The second, I recognize, is a curveball, but it's a curveball that is presented to us by the state legislature, continuing to gut public education, leading the country in cuts to education over the last 10 years. In the Brookings Institute study that Roy Williams presented to us a couple of weeks ago, it basically said Oklahoma City is running out of time. It basically, if you interpret that and you put the cuts to higher education and the cuts to public education that the legislature is instituting, it basically says there is not going to be an innovation district, not one that thrives. There's not going to be success in the ways that the Brookings Institution says are possible, but we are running out of time. Investments have to be made in public education, and it's very clear, I thought of all years, this would be the year that they finally did something, and they did worse than almost all of us expected them to do in terms of public education. If the city, like other cities in the country, if the city were to step up to the plate, like we have done in the past with Maps for Kids, and said we will invest in our schools in Oklahoma City. We can't take care of the state, but we can take care of our own. if we divided the money into a 50-50 split, where half of the money went into per pupil funding for school supplies and to decrease class size, the other 50% went into teacher raises or a teacher bonus and support staff bonus, you would see, and then you included that in this proposal, you would see support from the public skyrocket. It's a consideration on a couple of levels. You could consider it including it in this, which I would strongly advocate for. If for some reason this MAPS didn't work out and the people voted it down, and you wanted to know how to do a MAPS program that would have strong support, you could include it then. There are other ways that the city could help public education. If you didn't want to include it in all of this, the city could consider an income tax. The city has the ability to do an income tax, and the city could do an income tax for that 50-50 split as a separate measure. But I think that has to enter the discourse, and I realize that that's a curveball at this stage in the game. But the legislature put us in this position, and the polling indicates that the people of Oklahoma City strongly want someone to take care of the schools, and that includes us.
All right, any other comments? Well, I think that the split, how we've done it, the 3/4 towards mainly streets, but it includes other things that directly affect neighborhoods, and then the 1/4 which is the 1/4% that's going to be used significantly to increase police presence is being very receptive to the feedback that I get all the time, and I think that most everybody gets. So I think it's being very responsive to our citizens. And I mean, I would, including something else maybe in the temporary, the 3/4 took, maybe would be a good thing. Because I don't think that that's all that we could include in that, but I think overall the plan is a good idea.
I think it's really, I think it's really important to remember in this conversation, and we've got 12 items on our agenda, because they couple this penny with the bond issue, which is almost $1 billion worth of projects specifically dedicated to the kinds of things we're talking about, parks and quality of life issues, improving city facilities. So I believe that's the reason that these two things are being introduced simultaneously, is that one addresses some of these very big concerns at all levels that our citizens have, and the second is to address the critical issues of police, fire, and streets, which we're trying to put all of those into two different packages. I also think it's really important to say this is not MAPS for streets. We didn't name it MAPS for streets. That's a reporter that chose a name. There is precedent for us to extend a penny for a short period of time for a specific project. We did it, we called it the sports facilities package that we did to improve the Chesapeake Arena. We've done it previously to extend the penny with MAPS 1 to finish the arena appropriately. We have a very good purpose and a very strong focus for what this capital project is, and it is not MAPS, and it doesn't change the game. It allows us the opportunity to address what the citizens have asked us to do, which is address streets, and provide us 27 months to develop a much larger package should the citizens want in a MAPS 4 type program.
Yeah, David?
Your Honor, if we took this proposal to most of the neighborhoods in Ward 5, I think we'd get a resounding vote of confidence for it. Streets, sidewalks, those types of items are the number one issue that comes up during my neighborhood association meetings throughout the year. Within the past year, there's an article, the past month, an article came out that rated Oklahoma City streets as some of the worst in the country, and they identified the cost to the average driver for those poor conditions of the streets, and it exceeds $3,000 a year in additional repairs that the average driver is incurring here in Oklahoma City. That's more than double my property taxes that I pay on my residence. So if we went out to the residents and said, you know, we'd like to assess each one of you $3,000, I think we'd get a unanimous no on that. But that's what it's costing the citizens of Oklahoma City currently to drive on the streets in their current condition. So this is a temporary 27-month initiative combined with our GO bond election to upgrade our streets. They won't get to the top 10 in America, but hopefully they'll get above the bottom 10. And the average driver will no longer be incurring up to $3,000 a year in repairs and maintenance on their automobiles for the current conditions. So again, in Ward 5, I think we'll get a strong yes vote for the proposal as it's being presented. Thank you.
Anybody else on council want to speak? Yeah, Larry?
Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but what we're doing today is we're introducing this. And then it's going to be a public hearing in 2 weeks.
That's correct.
And at that public hearing, people who have different ideas, either for or against or creative alternatives, will have an opportunity to come and present those ideas to us up here.
Yes.
And in the meantime, each of us as council persons have an opportunity to receive feedback from the folks in our ward. As David was articulating what he thinks the folks in Ward 5 will do, I can get feedback on Ward 3 and see what they would want. So we'll have a consensus on something concrete. So what we're doing here today is not the final thing at all. We're just introducing it again and moving the process forward. I think we need to keep that in mind.
That's correct.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Everything except for what we just voted on item K. That was actually a joint resolution.
Well, it was the resolution to how would you state it, Jim?
Yeah. Resolution.
You're talking about the GO bonds?
Yeah. No, it was a resolution to establish the strategic implementation, strategic investment plan that lays out the criteria for the use of the GOLD bonds, if in the bond program and if approved by the voters.
It isn't easy to understand because we have so many legalities here to get this process going. So I'll make it as clear as I can. The first vote is on 9L, and this is to introduce and set a public hearing on the 3/4 cent sales tax that would have a sunset of April 1st, 2020. Is there a motion? Cast your votes. All right, it passed unanimously. Then item 9M would set a public hearing and push forward the idea of calling a special election on September 12th. But the public hearing would be June 13th. But the item introduced is the expectation of calling a special election on September 12th on the 3/4 cent aspect of this. All right. Is there a second? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. All right. Item N is
special election proclamation.
Again, the proclamation that we'll be calling a public hearing on June 13th with a final hearing on June 20th with the expectation of holding a special election on September 12th. And this is on the 3/4 cent aspect of it. Is there a motion? All right, cast your votes. It passed unanimously. All right. Then item 9O is, again, the 3/4 cent. And this has to do with the calling the election, and it notifies certain boards around the state that we intend to call an election. All right, cast your votes. It passed unanimously. And then item 9P kind of puts forward how the money would be spent if the 3/4 cent sales tax ultimately was passed by the voters. And again, there's a public hearing on the 13th and the final hearing on the 20th. Cast your votes. It passed unanimously. All right, now we move on to the 1/4 cent. And the 3/4 cent was largely for capital improvements, streets, trails, streetscapes.
That was the 3/4 cent. Now we're moving to the 1/4 cent.
And now we're moving to the 1/4 cent, which is for general fund, which traditionally has been spent in a large majority for public safety. But we go to the city council for their discretion. It is item 9Q, and if this passes, we will be introducing the item and setting a public hearing on June 13th and a final hearing on June 20th. All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. 9R, again, is the quarter cent, and this would, let's see, this would involve the sales tax and explains...
Yeah, this is a resolution to authorize a special election proclamation.
All right. Cast your votes on 9R. It passes unanimously. And then 9S, again, has to do with the process of introducing and calling for a special election, the public hearing of which would be on June 13th and the final hearing on June 20th. And this has to do with the quarter cent. This is on 9S. Is there a motion? Second. All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And item 9T is, it does several things, but among them it notifies certain state agencies that we intend to call an election and gives them the jurisdiction and the amount of the sales tax, et cetera. And again, this has the public hearing of June 13th and a final hearing of June 20th as well. Is there a motion on 9T? Second. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And item 9U, again, has to do with the quarter cent sales tax, and it explains how that money would be spent. And the answer is it would go into the general fund, which traditionally has been spent around 2/3, but generally almost always over half on public safety. All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. All right, now we're on to item 9V. And Eric, are you going to have a presentation on this, or is Rita going to be involved?
Harry Fields. You going to outline it for us?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The next item on your agenda is item 9V, and there's 1 and 2. And I think what you'll find if you've read the background to this application was that there's actually been a series of requests made by several neighborhoods in downtown Oklahoma City, Heritage Hills, Mesta Park, and Heritage Hills East, to provide for stop signs in the neighborhoods. And so this actually goes back a number of years. There was actually an original study that was done that was commissioned by the neighborhoods by TEC, Traffic Engineering Consultants, to help them come up with this recommendation. They've also made appearances at a number of meetings last year. And then just most recently, this just past month, they appeared before the Traffic Commission in which they were granted 19 locations for the installation of stop signs throughout that neighborhood. There has been some questions about the action of the Transportation and Traffic Commission. Staff from the Engineering Department, upon request, was asked what the process is for the appeal of that action, and the City Council serves as that body that receives the appeals from the Traffic Commission. We erroneously provided some information to the response in our interpretation of 10 days. And so, as we have in the past, and we've corrected this moving forward, we interpreted the 10 days as 10 working days. And so that date was provided to the appeal. We have later learned that that 10 days is calendar days. And so you actually have 2 options for your consideration today on the consideration of this appeal of the Traffic Commission in granting those 19 locations for stop signs in those neighborhoods. The first is to deny the appeal because it was untimely filed, or the second is to determine that the erroneous information about the appeal deadline by city staff is sufficient cause for us to waive that for you to hear that appeal today. So I've got additional background information should you have questions. I think a lot of that is in your packet, so I'm not sure the amount of information that you have before you, but again, I'm available for any questions you might have.
Eric, I'm sorry, but could you repeat the second option we would have, please?
So the second option is to determine the information that was provided by traffic engineering staff was erroneous to allow you to proceed with that appeals process, even though what actually happened is the appeal deadline was not met.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Kenny, could we get a legal opinion on this? Because I really think this first piece is a legal issue, and whether or not we have the authority to hear it because the matter was not timely filed.
I think because of the facts, you could potentially find that the applicant detrimentally relied upon what the information they were erroneously given by city staff about the appeal date being 10 business days versus 10 days. However, the ordinance is clear. The appellant should have looked at the ordinance themselves, and they should have filed it within 10 days, as the ordinance clearly provides. So I would apply, personally, if I were voting, I would apply the deadline to file the appeal and say it was an untimely appeal. The appellant will still have an appeal to court.
You know, to me, that just doesn't seem like the right thing to do. I mean, city staff gave out erroneous information innocently, and it seems to me like we could be opening ourselves up to some legal liability if we didn't listen to it.
If a majority of the council wants to hear it, you can deem that the city basically, that the appellant detrimentally relied on the information given to
and just so the council is clear, this was a series of stop signs that a neighborhood went to the traffic commission. Stop signs don't come to us afterwards. The traffic commission can pass it and the stop signs can be built. But the appeal comes to council if someone doesn't like what happened there. So that's why we haven't dealt with this before, but the appeal is before us. Then you have the issue of whether or not the appeal was filed timely. It wasn't legally, but the protestant was basing his information on the timeliness on erroneous information provided by staff. That's why I'm suggesting it seems like the appropriate thing to do is to hear the appeal.
I have several neighborhoods that I think this would impact outside of Heritage Hills, so I'd like to at least have the policy discussion, because I think it's, can you have stop sign implementation where maybe it doesn't meet the city's current criteria for placing a stop sign at an intersection? To me, that's the policy decision that the council would be asked to decide, and I have neighborhoods that's happening, that have talked about the schools, the elementary schools in their neighborhoods, and people cutting across, and I'm guilty of some of that myself. So, I mean, I think that policy discussion, I would hope that we could have, irregardless of what we decide on the appeal.
Any other comments or questions?
Either way you go, the appellant or the petitioners for the stop signs will be able to go to district court, whichever way council rules.
Interesting. Okay.
That was going to be my comment, was I think because it's so clear in the ordinance that the appellant could easily, either person will have the option to take this decision.
Yeah. So,
on
Francis,
court.
am I right here? Do we vote to consider the appeal?
Yes, that would be the first.
That would be the first step.
Motion would
Okay.
be to vote on whether you considered it timely filed or not.
All right. So I guess I'm looking for a motion in one way or the other that we do consider the appeal or that we do not consider the appeal.
Well, I think based on the advice of the municipal councilor that the ordinance is very clear, as much as I greatly regret that we gave the wrong information, my motion is going to be that we deny the appeal because it was not timely filed.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second that. I'd like to make a comment with that. That's a frustration that we in that work with the Internal Revenue Service and the Oklahoma Tax Commission encounter on a regular basis. We cannot rely upon comments, direction that's just solely in verbal type information, unless there's a particular letter ruling that we can rely upon. We have to, as Councilwoman Salyer indicated, assume the responsibility of understanding the rules ourselves. So it's difficult at times. We're frustrated at times, but we have to follow the same rules. So I would agree with her assessment that if the ordinance is clear, our erroneous advice shouldn't override the actual ordinance. In fact, I don't know how it could.
Okay, so based on what I'm hearing here, a yes vote is to deny the opportunity for an appeal because of the timeliness factor. Yeah, Tom?
Mayor, so am I correct in understanding that if we approve the ability to appeal, we will hear the appeal now, or is it going to be?
Yeah, I think we would hear the appeal now.
Okay. I guess my thought on it is that if it was based on city staff's erroneous information, it was probably, I'm sure it was just a mistake, and possibly we have the ability, by listening to an appeal, of kind of correcting that mistake. So that's just my thought on it.
Larry?
Kenny, help me out on this if you would. If we vote not to hear it because of the date situation, and it goes to district court, does the district court just look at whether we should have heard it, or will the district court look at the merits of the appeal itself and decide stop sign or no stop sign?
The district judge will have discretion to do what they want to, but probably what they would do, since you would not be ruling on the merits of the appeal, the court would decide whether we should have heard it or not. And if they decide we should have heard it because of the erroneous information provided to the appellant, then they'll send it back for you to have a hearing on the merits.
Okay. All right, so a yes vote is to not hear the appeal because it didn't meet the timeliness aspect. All right, everybody ready to vote? All right, cast your votes. It's 4-4, so the motion fails. All right. Are there any other motions?
Can I ask Eric a question about
Sure.
it?
I'm looking for direction right now.
Eric, are there options to neighborhoods besides stop signs? I mean, slow ramps, speed bumps. Is the city looking at any alternative, not necessarily for this case, but as we move forward? Or are neighborhoods currently in a situation where the only option they have is implementation of stop signs?
So there's been an ongoing conversation, and this would just be not just Oklahoma City, but cities across America where we talk about traffic calming. What are those tools that are used for neighborhoods where you want to actually slow and make traffic more safe, especially where you have long, straight streets through a lot of neighborhoods just by general design? And so planning commissions and traffic commissions have been working. Our specific planning commission and traffic commission have had actually a series of conversations with the traffic commission actually forming a small committee of two of the commissioners to actually study some of these ideas. And so although we don't have anything officially in place yet, there are some ideas and concepts that are being studied that could be implemented sometime this year. And they might include what they call either speed humps or speed cushions. These would be just increased in height of a roadway where it's not necessarily a bump, but something that does help slow that traffic. We would also have things like driver feedback devices, and you see these in some areas of the city because some are buying these, but they are where you actually see the radar with the speed limit attached underneath the posted speed limit that reminds you how fast you're driving on one of those areas. But we're also looking at some things like other devices like we've experienced or are working with chicanes, medians, traffic circle, roundabout type options, even in the neighborhood setting as well. So although we haven't formally adopted any of these as policy, we are looking to maybe have a recommendation of the Traffic Commission going forward. Hopefully in this next year, we'll be able to offer some sort of toolbox to our residences of our neighborhoods to at least consider those for possible implementation.
And what is your criteria right now for whether a stop sign goes into a intersection?
So it actually changes depending on the type of street. And so in this particular case, I will just generally say that it includes the traffic volume, the sight distance, which is a safety feature where if you have an intersection that's hard to see around a corner, sight distance is your ability to see that oncoming traffic, and then actual crash records. And so there's more details to the review than just that. They'll actually look at the amount of traffic and how fast it's driving and the records in which they occurred within the last 6 months or 12 months and some of those criteria before they make the decision, but it's those three categories.
So if you were going to give alternatives like speed humps, chicanes, would you have to come up with a list of criteria for neighborhoods to be eligible for those as well?
So I think as we envision the policy, and again, it hasn't been adopted by the Traffic Commission, but it's one being considered, it would be a policy of the city to allow neighborhoods, as funding's identified, as maybe staff works with those neighborhoods to install such devices that then would be maintained by the city moving forward. But again, I use those three types. It's not that there's a fund of the city right now that would allow us to go out neighborhood-wide, city-wide, and just start installing these. We have to work very closely with the neighborhoods upon some sort of a request system to evaluate, come up with a means to fund, and then put them in place.
You have devices that record every car going down a street, including what time, the speed they were traveling, and you could record that for 24-hour blocks, correct?
We do have the ability to do speed studies, which is very much a part of the factoring that went into this specific case. They actually did speed studies, yes.
So could you run an experiment where you get a baseline and then you put feedback devices on streets or put speed humps on certain streets and then look at the post-treatment result?
I don't know that we've advanced it to that level, but I guess that's possible. But I guess what we're looking at is something that would be almost like a pre-approved level of treatments for a street without a lot of criteria, that as long as it was limited to neighborhood streets, that the neighbors of that street had no objection to the installation of such devices, that we would proceed with some installations in that way. So this would be strictly neighborhoods, not arterial streets, not any of necessarily the collectors or the larger streets in the city, just the residentials.
All right, so where we are right now is that we will not be hearing the appeal, but David, are you representing the appellant? Is that the correct term?
No, I'm actually representing the neighborhoods, which would be the appellee. So I'm happy to go first. I'm happy to let the appellant go first.
I don't think we're going to hear it. Ian, do you want to come up and speak? Do you want to come up and speak? It would seem to me, based on where we are, your option would be across the street in district court to determine either the merits of the case or the council's indecision on whether or not they wanted to hear it.
So I might chime in real quick. And Kenny and Francis correctly, I think procedurally the appeal needs to be heard now because the motion to dismiss essentially had no action, so I think the appeal now needs to be heard.
We're not viewing it that way.
Okay.
We're viewing it as the council has to vote one way or the other to either hear it or not hear it.
And you have to have 5.
And we have to have 5, so it has to pass. So it's 4-4. Yeah. Ian, I'll need your name and address for the record.
Ian McDermott, 2605 Northwest 58th. Your Honor, Counsel, thank you for your time. I guess it goes without saying I'm a little disappointed that we couldn't hear my appeal today. However, I am extremely excited that we were able to have some meaningful discussion. That was absolutely my intent by putting in an appeal. I don't believe that stop signs are an effective means of traffic calming or traffic control. I was a bit upset that this passed the Traffic Commission without meeting any of the city guidelines or any of the governmental guidelines of placing stop signs. I feel that the wards to the north, Midtown, Paseo, Jefferson Park, etc., weren't given any consideration. However, I do appreciate you guys having a meaningful conversation about traffic calming, and I hope that in the future we can move forward with a meaningful, effort, especially moving forward with the comprehensive plan.
All right. Ian, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, for coming down. We really appreciate your comments. And if I could, Mayor, I just would like to thank the 3 neighborhoods that came down in such force. We've been serenaded with little ones today, who I think a lot of this was about safety for kids walking in the neighborhood. And I just would like to say that we ask our neighborhoods to get involved in their quality of life in their neighborhoods and what makes them feel safe. And so that's why everybody's here today. And they've been working on this, as you mentioned. This is a project that's been underway for many, many years. And I want to recognize the Ward 6 Traffic Commissioner, J.B. Schuline, who's here and has helped spear this, and Bill Carey. I don't know if he's still here, but Bill's still here. Bill led the effort on this desire of the neighborhood. And so I'm disappointed. I'm sorry that we gave bad information. But I do think we did the right thing legally, and hopefully everybody can come to a resolution on making this work. And the idea is for these neighborhoods to be safe for people to walk in and be outside and enjoy.
Right.
Thank you all very much.
Right.
So can I ask Kenny, because I have neighborhoods that want to do the same thing, so, and I'm not sure what to take from this meeting. Could I tell them that based on the Traffic Commission's approval under this situation, that if they have an identical situation, they should be able to expect to have the same result? I mean, is there precedent that way, or?
I'll be glad to let David address that.
So I can explain that. So what we did was we filed, once we knew an appeal was filed, we filed an open records request about that very issue. And what we found were there were 61 stop sign applications approved in the last 5 years. Of those 61, 36 of them failed to meet every criteria required.
Okay.
54 of the 61 failed to meet various portions of the criteria. And the reason why is Traffic Commission has historically looked at it as a burden to the neighborhood. So if the neighborhood is there with mass support, they tend to say, you know the traffic patterns better than we do. If you're willing to burden yourselves, we'll give you your approval. And that's why you see 54 of 61 fail to meet the criteria over the last 5 years. So I would say yes, if they had widespread neighborhood support, they'd probably be greeted very favorably.
Okay.
Yeah. And the answer to your question is really it's a case-by-case basis, so it just depends on what facts are presented to the Traffic Commission, what ruling they're going to make. I mean, if you have people from the neighborhood coming before the Traffic Commission, as David said, saying that there's a problem out there, then you have a chance of getting it approved.
Well, I would hope the council would consider some alternatives to stop signs. I mean, stop signs, and I know the Traffic Commission is working on it, so, and that's coming to us, but if we could maybe consider running some experiments and seeing which are most effective on our streets.
And I truly don't disagree with that. We need better tools.
Yeah.
But we need to use the tools we have right now to try to help. Yeah.
Right. All right, we're moving on to item 9W. And this would be to adjust membership fees for Zoo Friends, item 9W. I'll ask everyone to please leave the room quietly as you can. We're still conducting business here.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'm Dwight Lawson, 2101 Northeast 50th Street. I'm the Executive Director of the Zoo. Something I said. I know we've had a lot of presentations today, so I appreciate the opportunity to present some brief background information on a pricing change request. This follows the Zoo's first strategic plan, which was approved last year, and anticipates our accreditation cycle this year, as well as some of our elements of the master plan, or most recent elements of the master plan that are getting ready to be finished pretty soon. Specifically, we're putting this forward to respond to a need to meet higher and evolving standards of animal care and welfare, to be able to better maintain existing and new facilities, provide enhanced guest experiences that are much more personalized than we have in the past, and improve our education impact both on grounds and in the community. Some key points for consideration in this. The zoo's admission price has only increased $2 in the last 20 years. During that time, with more than 1 million guests annually now, we've grown to become Oklahoma's largest cultural attraction. But that growth, combined with about $80 million in capital expansion and some of the innate cost increases that we have, be it health care or wages, things like that, have driven our operating costs up by about $8.7 million in that period of time. In addition, our membership and admission rates are the lowest of peer-accredited zoos in the country, and they're lower than most comparable attractions here in Oklahoma City. And continuing to enable us to expand also allows us to expand our economic impact, which was about $45 million in 2015. As part of this planning and considerations of price increases, we are focused on, we continue to look at the ability of the community to access the zoo, and we are focused on programs that serve disadvantaged members of the community. So I apologize for all the information on this side, some of which didn't come through. But looking at some of our attendance patterns, as Oklahoma City has become more of a regional attraction, so has the zoo. The chart on the far left, my left, is kind of our general attendance. You can break it down. It's roughly a third general admission, a third free and discount attendance, and a third is comprised by Zoo Friends members. Of the non-member attendance to the zoo, of those roughly 1 million people each year, only about 28% of those folks are coming from Oklahoma City itself. And of the approximately 30,000 Zoo Friends households that we have, the chart on the right, about 61% of those households are now from outside of Oklahoma City as well. Looking at our current pricing structure, the zoo's admission and membership rates are the lowest among benchmark institutions. They're actually about half of the average cost, be it general admission or membership of this group. And that price disparity is even more pronounced when you consider other variables such as our total and developed acreage, which are on the high side of all those comparable institutions. So of the 60-plus accredited zoos and aquariums that are on this list, these are institutions with annual operating budgets of anywhere from $7 to $26 million, which we typically get benchmarked against. The average admission price is $17 for adults, or this was 2 years ago. It's gone up since then. $17 for adults, $12 for children. Average family membership, which is the bulk membership package that most families or most members have, is about $130 zoo average, and you can see that Oklahoma City Zoo is the absolute lowest of all of those benchmark comparisons. Locally, our current pricing is also lower than many of the local attractions, even though our fixed costs are quite high. You can see where we land there relative to our local colleagues. And just to put in perspective, the Science Museum, the National Memorial, an average Thunder ticket, and the Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum are much more in line with the accredited zoo averages for admission. I mentioned that about a third of the zoo attendance is from free and discount admissions. So despite our already low pricing, access is already an issue for some of the community. In reviewing this data, it's apparent that whether it's just price, there are probably some other factors involved. There are barriers to some folks coming to the zoo. As an example, our own neighborhood and the 73111 zip code comprises less than 1% of our paid admissions and less than 1% of our member households, so that's disappointing. So we are committed to reviewing and growing our portfolio of access programs. You can see that list there. In addition to the free day, which we've done for quite a long time, this year we initiated a partnership with the Metropolitan Library System where you can check out a book about a visit to the zoo, get a free pass for 4 to come. We are initiating Teacher Appreciation Days this year, where teachers and their families can come learn about the zoo programs, but also enjoy a day at the zoo in exchange for that. We have the standard discounts and other admissions that you can see. And this is not a new program, but approximately 40% of Zoo Friends memberships are actually purchased at a reduced rate thanks to the Mathis Brothers promotion, which is going on now, so it's a perfect time to renew your membership. And finally, these are the proposed changes that we're looking at. The admission pricing has been reviewed and recommended by the Finance Committee of the Zoo as well as the Zoo Trust, and the membership pricing component has been approved by the OZS Board. I'm happy to answer any questions about this, or I'd call on Tim Resnick, the Executive Director of Zoo Friends, who's here as well to answer any specific questions on membership. Thank you.
How do you respond when someone says it's too expensive, I can't afford to take my family to the zoo? What's your response to that?
To reference those discount and access programs that we have.
And how many days are there included in that package?
Well, there's the one free day, but then there's the library pass program, so any of the folks with go get a library pass, go check out that book and bring the family to the zoo. There are all sorts of promotions that go on throughout the year, be it Dr. Pepper cans and get discounts for package tickets. We have group rates and all sorts of things like that. So it really is not a one-size-fits-all, but depending on who's wanting to come and for what reason, we can direct them on those programs.
I just want people to make sure that they understand you're sensitive to the pricing, and no one wants a zoo that people cannot afford to go to.
Right.
And you've checked prices with other zoos around the country, and ours seems to be appropriate.
We are of that group, which is the similar institutions for accredited zoos, we're the absolute lowest.
Okay.
And even with this price increase, we'll still be the bottom 1 or 2 of that 60-plus group average.
All right. Thanks for all your work out there. We're very proud of the zoo. Anybody want to comment? Or?
Your Honor, I would
Yes,
just like
Dave.
to mention that, one, you have to kind of pay for quality, and to maintain the quality that we currently have at the Oklahoma City Zoo is going to require funding. But this additional funding, as was presented, will actually provide greater opportunities for those who could not afford to attend the zoo currently to be able to attend it in the future. So it benefits a lot of people, and it helps maintain the quality that our zoo currently has, and it's nationally recognized as one of the best zoos in the country.
Absolutely. All right,
Mayor?
Todd.
I just wanted to say thanks as a family past member, owner, I guess. I just wanted to say thank you for the zoo. And my grandkids love it out there. My wife loves it out there. So we have a lot of fun out there. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Dwight, do we have any exciting news about anything happening out at the zoo?
I do. I'd like to reserve some of that for
No worries.
bigger hurrah.
Can
Yeah.
you just give us a tease? I mean, you don't, this is a teaser, that we've got exciting things happening.
Yes, there are exciting things happening all the time.
All right, thanks, Dwight. All right. Michael, are you wanting to comment on the zoo prices? All right.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury here, I don't think by far that this gentleman is just deliberately trying to take money from the community, because I don't know. But you also have to realize, too, with the economic conditions of the African-American community, number one, who we know leads in incarceration, especially in our ward, based upon my studies of being a certified paralegal, to add an increase for a visit of adult to $3. It seems to me is not very much really, but when you take into consideration that you have people who cannot afford it already and who already loves being able to come to the zoo, especially during the summer times and watching the animals with the kids and what have you, you have to also realize too that you're naturally going to have people talking now in the community. You're going to be saying, oh man, it's gone up to $3. Now I can't buy my pair of shoes that I need for church or whatever. You know, I can't say what's on their minds, but this is something that you need to consider before you do this. You're already paying $8, which again, I think that's pretty reasonable. I mean, because you can forego buying a hamburger or a Tasty Freeze. But at the same time, too, you got to realize a lot of us don't have money over on this side of town. Now, if we allow such an increase to be visited upon the individual, again, you're going to already see when you see $11 when you walk through the zoo doors, you know, naturally people are going to start whispering. And I'm saying to you as well, we also should consider the fact that there was new construction done on the zoo recently. So now then, maybe we need to find out who needs to pay for that. Maybe that $3 increase. Now, I don't know because I don't know the man. But I do have to give the committee all sides to review and consider prior to your vote on this. Now, again, we've had construction done on the street, the pavements, the sidewalks, additional driving ports or areas right there in the zoo area and the science museum. And I think, again, to add an increase like that without bringing it to the public's attention to and letting it basically surprise and shock them, because I've seen nothing on television, we're planning to do this. So this is clandestine in reality. Had I not been here today, I myself would have known about that $3 increase regarding the admissions fee. And then also increasing the fees for membership with families. Do you know how many people would want to come and actually be a part of the zoo? They have little bitty babies. Mama, can we go to the zoo today? As a matter of fact, me being an adult, I've gone in for a time or two, and I like to see the little giraffes and things and, you know, waving at them or whatever. Okay, that's the little kid in me that hasn't grown up yet. But at the same time, I like for you people to basically consider what I'm saying here, because you don't live in the African-American community. And when I say African-American community, let me say this right briefly. I was talking about Hispanic. I'm talking about Chinese. I'm talking about black, white, pink, purple, orange, whatever you want to give him. I represent the people. If you lived in my community, sir, I would be down here speaking in your behalf too, because I don't see it as mine. I see it as ours. Now, when I don't say ours, it's because you don't live over there, just like I don't live in your neighborhood, so that's yours. So what I'm saying is that I need y'all to consider that.
All right. We're voting on item 9W, and this would approve the Zoo Friends membership policy changes. Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Then item 9X is to approve the adjustments in the fees. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, item 9Y. Understand we do not need executive session on this item?
That's correct.
All right, how about a motion then to approve the resolution? Cast your votes. It passes unanimously. Item 9Z is claims recommended for denial. Is there anyone here hoping to speak under any item listed under claims recommended for denial? Okay, we have a couple arms going up. How about you go first? Okay.
Good morning, Honorary Mayor and members of the council. My name is Sherilyn O'Melia, and I live at 1306 Downing Street. And I hope that you've had the opportunity to review my file that I submitted. If not, I came prepared.
Okay. Well, tell us what happened.
On January 17th of 2017, there was a lot of water spewing from the hydrant that is on my property, or on the borderline of my property, and city line maintenance crews came to repair a supposed main. I'm a teacher. I got home about 4 o'clock. They were there from 4 till approximately midnight. That is about 8 hours. Additionally, the water was spewing with remarkable force for approximately 3 hours. Most of that period of time, there were no workers on site. So when I received the papers and the litigation proceedings or whatever, and they said denied, I reviewed those words on there, and there were a couple of things that jumped out at me. One of them was...
What were the damages?
$985 was my estimate to repair my irrigation sprinkling system.
Okay.
When I did find a crew member, I told them, please do not park your backhoe on my property because underneath it is my sprinkler system. I think that you can do this work right from the street because there is an easement, I understand that, of 12 feet, I believe it is, but the backhoe has a very long arm and it could reasonably work from the street, and there were no parked cars in the way or anything like that. But they just kind of shrugged me off, and so I started taking pictures. Well, anyway, the proximate cause was one thing that jumped out at me. It says proximate cause of an event must be that which in a natural and continuous sequence, unbroken by an independent cause, produces the event, and without which the event would not have occurred. And I want to contend that if the backhoe had not been parked on my property for approximately 8 hours, my sprinkling system wouldn't have deteriorated and wouldn't have been basically annihilated as it was. Additionally, on the second page of the document I received, it says that the owner of an easement may utilize the servient estate in such a manner that is reasonably necessary to carry out the servitude's intended purposes and to allow enjoyment of the rights bestowed upon the easement. Well, reasonably necessary. Did they do their job in a reasonably necessary fashion? I would believe that that would not be the case because the workers were not on site most of that time. The vehicles were vacant, and the backhoe was just sitting there. Additionally, the wasteful use of all that water concerned me, and it also dug a terrific ditch in my property. I made several pleas to the supervisor that I was directed to instruct. I called 7 times before I got any response, and finally, after 3 months, there was dirt that filled in the hole. The hole was a concern because there are many walkers in our neighborhood, and I felt that it was a hazard. My neighbors additionally were complaining. And then it took an additional month for them to put any kind of sod down. So that is my plea to you today. I ask for favor and for mercy as a modest teacher trying to get by.
Don't go anywhere.
Thank you.
Tina, can you help us here?
Yes. On January 17th, we got notice of a water line break. We responded. The break evidently was in her front yard. Yeah, they did dig a big hole because those water lines are like 4 feet down underneath the ground. They effected repairs on that date. They even spent some time attempting to fix a break in her sprinkler system. That's not their area of expertise, but sometimes they're able to fix those. They went back out on February 3rd and dressed the yard. Then they went out subsequent to that and put in a great deal of sod that covered all of the area that the backhoe had been on and that the work was performed in. My information is that our work was all done inside of our easement. There was no real, sod put down in January and early February wouldn't have turned green, but if there was a delay there, we're sorry about that. I'm not sure how that's damaged. The damages she's seeking are for extensive repairs to her sprinkler system. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Sprinkler systems are frequently located inside of our easements. Those easements were reserved to the city when the neighborhoods went in to allow us to get in to service the utilities that run underneath that portion of that property. We attempt, when we go out to make repairs to our utilities, to stay within those easements and to do everything reasonably. The delay does not cost any money to her because the price of fixing the sprinkler system, I'm not sure how that got to be more over the delay. So even assuming that delay was a little longer than necessary, although that's not the only thing we're doing in the city at the time, but that would not have resulted in any further damage to her. I was never given, I did not personally handle this claim until it was written up by an intern of mine. There are no notes in here saying that we got outside of our easement. I don't remember seeing something about there was a big hole in my yard for a while. It may have been in the conversations that they had. I don't think that water utilities got out of the city's easement, and I don't think that they did anything that would result in liability for us.
Yeah.
On the information I have.
Right.
If I could refute that for a moment.
Hold on just a second.
Okay.
Kenny, based on what you've heard, what about legal discretion here by the council? Is this the type of claim that the council could choose to pay if it chose?
If all the work was done within the city easement, the easement area is subject to our right to go on there and do repairs.
So she would be responsible if her sprinkler system were damaged as long as we were on the easement, even though we would have caused the damage?
Yes.
That doesn't sound right.
Our easement is legally more substantial and reserves our rights before those systems go in, and we wouldn't be able to effectively service all of the stuff that we have under there that's for the benefit of the neighborhood if we couldn't get in there.
Okay, go ahead.
On February 17th, they came out and made a very shabby attempt to put dirt in there, and it was still quite sunken in and still a hazard. And I did have to continually hound them to get results. But you know what? I'm not even about the delay. I'm really about, and I realize I do have the problem of the easement, which does put me kind of in a quandary here. But I will say that did they act with reasonable, necessary care, which is what this states? No, they did not. Okay. And I would just plead for you just to exercise common sense.
Yeah, so you're saying that reasonable care would have included not putting the backhoe where you had told them that there was a sprinkler system underneath when you believe they could have done it outside, even though we had the legal right to do it on your property?
That is correct, sir.
Okay.
That's an argument that can be made. It's a question of fact.
Yeah.
Do you think that parking the backhoe on her property for that period of time is actually what caused the damage? If council think that's what caused the damage, then you could approve the claim on that basis, because obviously they could have parked the backhoe in the street too.
And that's what I'm contending, sir. Thank you for that point.
Okay. Is there a motion from council, or does anybody have any questions of?
Mayor?
Yeah, Todd.
If I could ask a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure.
Do you have a quote for the damage?
$985 to repair the sprinkler system.
How many sprinkler heads don't work?
Pardon me?
How many of the sprinkler heads don't work?
Actually, R&R Irrigation came out and they found multiple sprinkler heads that didn't work, but they said the biggest problem was there were multiple cracks in the lines due to the weight of the equipment, they think, that was parked on there. So they have to do kind of a search and investigation to really completely repair it. But I did submit an estimate. And incidentally, since I've owned the property, which is nearly 5 years, they have always serviced my irrigation system, and I've never had one problem with it, not even a cracked sprinkler head.
Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion from council on whether or not to deny the claim or to pay the claim?
What ward is it in?
That's a big problem because I'm in the village, so I don't fall, I slip right between the cracks. So I said, I've got to go and represent myself.
Yeah, but you're, this is a water trust issue then?
Well, the damage was done by city employees. We provide all water service for the village.
Okay. Okay. And we have a contract with the village that...
Well, we actually own the system in the village.
Okay. So she's a water customer of Oklahoma City, even though she doesn't live in Oklahoma City?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Is it the village's easement, or because I guess it's not the city of Oklahoma City easement?
We have, through agreement, we have the right to be in the city village's easement, or right away. I'm sure it's right away.
So it wouldn't be purview of the water trust?
The utilities department.
It's the utilities department.
It's city employees.
Yeah. It was the actions of a city employee.
If it had been an independent contractor doing the work for us for the village, Tina would have had that in the memo.
Yeah, if
That's
the
a
city
different-
employees were there, yes.
It was city employees, so we were doing, basically, we're a contractor of the village doing the work.
So is the contract with the village between the water trust and the village, or the city?
It's between us and her, I believe.
I mean, to provide water for the village.
But our utilities department, which is city employees, provides those services for the water trust.
And the area that the damage occurred was where the backhoe was parked?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Try to oversimplify this. I really believe the issue is whether or not they use reasonable care, or whether or not it was practical to make the excavation from the backhoe being out in the street. I think, because unfortunately, in the right-of-way, people put sprinkler systems, and whether it's OG&E or anybody, that there's always risks of having those sprinkler systems out in the right-of-way. And so I think the really determination of fact was whether or not this excavation could have been done from the street. And I don't have enough information. Chris is here. Chris Brown is the Director of Utilities. Might have a little more insight on that than me. I assume the main was probably 5 to 6 feet at that point.
Good morning. Typically, when we excavate, the water mains are about 4+ feet deep on the edge of the right-of-way. And when we excavate, we have to dig a pretty good hole. Now, in this case, if the water main had broken, it would have dug its own pretty big hole. And we'll restore to the best of our ability. Now, when we go out to make the restoration, we call for utility locate. Irrigation systems are never located. Other utilities are, so we don't even know if they're there. So when we dig, we may break an irrigation pipe, and in this case we did, and we repaired that pipe Now, the claim is that we damaged more than just that one place. I don't know if we did or not. We have no way of telling. When we restored the area, we restored the entire area. So if the water main washed out more ground, or if we had to dig a bigger hole to get to the pipe to fix it, then we would have restored the entire area and fixed the area that we had damaged in the irrigation system. So that's the only repair we would have made during that work.
There was an attempt made to fix the irrigation system. If you even turned on the water to check it, there was spewing water from multiple areas. And although I'm not a landscaper, I could perfectly well tell that that was broken. Thank you.
I think we've heard enough. I'm just looking for some direction from council.
Given the question of fact and not knowing all the details, I would accept coming up with 50% of the repair cost.
All right, is that one of the options that we have? All right, is there a second?
It is one of the options you have, although the claimant could still go to district court for the other 50%, except if it takes the money from us, we have her sign a waiver, so.
Okay, all right.
If you want us to try to settle it with the claimant, we could strike it from today and bring it back on the 13th.
Well, I mean, she's here today. I think she deserves an answer.
Oh, thank you so much.
I mean, she's sat around for, what, almost 4 hours now.
Then I would second the motion that we split the cost with her.
Okay, so we have a motion. We have a motion on the floor to split the cost. All right. So all in favor of that, say aye and vote yes. Okay, so that passes unanimously. Now, here's where you are. You're going to have city staff offering to pay half of your claim. If you sign that and accept it, it will probably, from listening to Kenny, it's going to take away your right to go across the street and sue us for the entire amount. So you don't get half the money and get to sue us too.
Well, I think I'll take it and run.
Okay. Well, that would be my advice too. All right. Thanks for coming down. I'm sorry you had to put up with so much this morning to wait your turn.
Well, it's actually quite enlightening. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And the other gentleman I saw raise his hand about a recommended for denial. Is there any other? Maybe a hand just went up inadvertently. Okay, so we're ready to vote then on claims recommended for denial for the rest of it. Is there a motion? All right, cast your votes. All right, it passes unanimously. All right, claims recommended for approval. Is there a motion here?
Move the items.
Assuming no one's here to speak on claims recommended for approval. All right, cast your votes. It passes unanimously. And then items from council. And John, you wanted to rescind a previous motion that we had passed?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I move the item.
All right, we have a motion and a second. This would rescind an item that had previously been passed by council. This is item 11A. Yeah, David.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Could we just clarify what we're voting on a little bit? It's my understanding that the resolution was to limit outdoor activities to not to continue beyond 11 p.m. Is that correct?
No, you want me to explain? I can explain
I'm sorry.
that. The last time you introduced an amendment to the PUD that had been approved in the previous meeting, the one before the last meeting, to amend it to provide that they could only have 3 concerts per calendar year, and that it had to be on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, and I believe 11 p.m. was still going to be the end time. After further discussion and also discussion with the applicant for the PUD and also his attorney, essentially this is a downzoning. You would be taking away some rights they have under the zoning that had been previously approved. And after we met with them, we decided that the best way to approach this is if they have a noise problems that to just treat it under the noise ordinance. So the people, no one actually showed up to protest this before it was approved by Planning Commission and Council. So you approved it as applied for. So our recourse now is really to just enforce the noise ordinance.
Okay. In reinforcing it, we've made sure that
the residents that are the nearest to this particular facility, that they understand that they need to call the police department and report it and say that they want to file a police report. Previously, when law enforcement officers came out there, they just said, call your councilman. And so there was some miscommunication. But on last week, we did visit with the leadership of the neighborhood, and we've been able to get the lines of communication open and clear what steps the neighborhood needs to take in reference to this, which is to call the police. If they hear it within their house, for them to immediately call the police and state that they want to file a police report related to loud noise. And previously, it was call your council. But we was able with police department and legal, we was able to kind of get the process worked out. It is still a major concern of mine, but hopefully by having the residents call the police, we'll be able to somewhat take care of it. Now, this is one zoning case I do regret on many different levels. So, but that's kind of where we are now. We're just asking those who are affected by this amphitheater for them to call the police if they hear it from within inside their house.
Thank you,
All right,
Councilman.
we have a motion and second to rescind it.
Yes, but I just want to make a comment, because I'm going to vote against it. And I appreciate your efforts, John, working with the community and the applicant. And this is going to show my age. I just believe outdoor activities that have any level of noise, above just speaking or whatever, shouldn't occur after 11 p.m. In Ward 5, we've had instances where there's an old racetrack down there by the river, and the noise just filters back up to the various residents. A variety of instances. I just don't see a need to allow concerts and other outdoor activities that can create noise to occur past 11 p.m. So I appreciate, again, what you're doing, and don't take this personally.
Absolutely not.
It's just an opportunity to voice my preference to limit activities not to occur past 11 p.m. that create noise. My goodness.
And I do believe we may be back to Dr. Shadid's statement on that we need to look at a larger policy, citywide policy. I think after what I have experienced dealing with this, I think we do need to look at a larger citywide policy on concerts and other outdoor events, because this it's beginning to be trouble citywide.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so we're voting on the resolution to rescind. The motion is to rescind it. Cast your vote, and it's rescinded by a count of 6-1. All right, still on items from council. John, anything else?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Meg? David?
Well, my final opportunity since the legislature is adjourned for the year to share my thoughts. And there's a lot of things that could be said, and I won't go into that, but I am disappointed with the way it ended up. These issues were present at the beginning of the session, and here it was last minute to come up with some type of an agreement to enter into a balanced budget. So I am disappointed. I think it presents a negative image for the entire state. And now, pulling what was done at the state level back to the local level, our citizens wouldn't ever accept us operating in that kind of condition. We go to great lengths to have very open, transparent meetings, discussions, votes, and I think that's the way it should be done at all levels of government. So I hope we see some changes going forward. And I think there's some indications that do concern me that Again, I'll just keep those to myself. But Jim, I would like to ask this. Could you ask Craig or maybe Doug to see if we could get some information to look at sales tax revenues and the decline? I know if we go back to 2014, our current year's revenues are similar to what they were back in 14. But if we could start with 14 and look at the decline from 14 to 15 to 16 to 17, and then compare that on a percentage basis with the state's sales tax decline, I think that would be an interesting comparison. And when I say sales tax, I would suggest we include use tax and probably, we'll just leave it at sales and use tax, just to see the differences in the decline in revenues and see if there's some differences beginning to develop between the larger urban areas and the state as a whole with respect to sales tax.
We'd be happy to look at those trends and get something back to you.
All right, Todd? Larry? Ed?
I second everything David said. I want to ask, on the sales tax on car sales, they specifically went out of their way to exclude cities, correct?
Well, sir, it wasn't a tax, it was a fee.
Oh, right. Excuse me.
And yes, it was an additional 1.5%, I believe, and it was a fee that goes only to the state. And yes, they went out of their way to make that clear.
Okay, so it's not considered a sales tax.
If it was a tax, if it was a sales tax, we were all under the same umbrella, so I think we would have been eligible to.
But
there's two distinctions on the fee. One, we don't get any, and secondly, it's their belief that they got out of the no revenue criteria in the last 5 days of the session.
But they specifically included language that said cities can't do the same thing. Is that correct?
I'd have to go look. I don't know that specifically, but I know that we weren't included. I don't know about the...
That was in the paper.
Okay, that they specifically excluded cities. Okay.
Yes. And
thanks.
All right, city manager reports.
Just the use or sales tax and use report for May, and it's a little better. You know, Russell Evans said that around June it was going to turn around, and so the sales tax was about $500,000 over last year, so that's good. It got a couple 2.6%, and the use tax was up around $500,000. We also started receiving revenue from Amazon, and that's not a one-to-one correlation, and we aren't allowed the specific information that how much Amazon is. That's information we don't get, individual vendor information, but I think you can think that probably a good share of that came from Amazon. So $500,000 up in sales tax, $500,000 up in use tax. That's the most positive trend we've had in quite a while, and Mr. Freeman was happy.
Jim, is there something that we should clarify about the Amazon tax? Because I've had a lot of people asking me questions, and I know that you see it on some. So Amazon is collecting tax on their direct sales.
That's correct.
But on their
vendors
third-party vendors, they are not collecting the tax.
Which is about estimated to be
probably about half. So, you know, I think a lot of people don't realize how much Amazon sells on behalf of other folks. And if those people don't have a nexus in Oklahoma, they're not collecting tax.
That's correct.
So,
you are absolutely correct.
I just want to be really clear, because that seems to be a question that a lot of people are asking.
And Jim, does it show up in the sales tax or the use tax?
It shows up in the use tax because it's tax paid out of state for something that's used in the state of Oklahoma.
So that should be easier for us to figure out what impact they're having.
Well, yeah. Yes, probably. Okay. Although the use tax is more volatile than the sales tax is.
Jim, not to get into too detail of a debate, but the fact that they now have a presence here in Oklahoma City,
yes,
wouldn't that recharacterize the tax they collect as a sales tax, as opposed to a use tax? If they had no physical presence here and they just voluntarily began to charge tax to the Oklahoma residents, yes, absolutely, that's a use tax. The fact that they now have a presence, I think it creates a nexus, and therefore it should be considered a sales tax.
I'm going to have to get you an answer on that one, because I know that practically what you're saying is exactly right, but my understanding was that they were going to be remitting as a use tax, so I'm just going to have to get clarification of the tax.
Well, and
commission
it may
on
be
that.
because they don't have Nexus yet. They're in the process of establishing it, but don't have it yet.
Where it is right now, I completely understand and agree, but practically with what
Yeah.
you're saying, that once they establish their nexus...
But that's speculative. I don't know that absolutely.
Yeah, just, and I'm sorry to be such a...
No, we'll
That's a good
get that
question.
clarified.
All right, citizens to be heard. Joe Sarge Nelson.
Joe Sarge Nelson. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to give you these. You probably already got them anyway. I'm here today to talk to you about our man who made the day to Oklahoma, Brian Keith. And naturally, the police department. I was going to say good morning here, Mr. Mayor, but it's actually in the afternoon. I'll take you 3 minutes, and that's it. Today, I'm really here on a citizen's mission more than anything else. It's kind of like all of us. We sit around at home on TV and everything. A lot of things we just take for granted. We really do. Doesn't make any difference what you're doing, whether you're riding around in your car, what you're doing. You look, but you don't see. Well, the facts are really on the table. I see it in the news every day, and I read it in the paper, just like this thing here, about the grass fires raging all over Oklahoma City, vehicle wrecks, fatalities, burglaries, robberies, assaults, murders, buildings or homes on fire, and even this list is way too long. Yet, when something goes seriously and tragically wrong, that's when our Oklahoma City Police and Fire Department instantaneously go into action. And I mean in action. They are above reproach. And when they go on that call, everything's at a high risk. And it's certainly it'll never be like any movie you'll ever see, because this is what they do is for real. Well, there's no replays, and I can go on and on about this, but my main thing is right here concerns 3 people. When the President of the United States calls on 3 people from Oklahoma and 2 out of Oklahoma City, I broke out in goosebumps, because 2 of the 3 I knew personally. And Keith is above reproach. You won't get better. And he's been called to take over his wing as Director of the Homeland Security. And former Governor Frank Keating's been called to take up the high-ranking position, whether he gets appointed or not, I don't know, of the FBI, which he's very good at his position. And, of course, naturally, Scott Pruitt, our former Attorney General. And when you think 3 coming from Oklahoma City tells you what kind of people we've really got. This is what kind of people you all have employed. And this speaks high for the city manager, the mayor. In other words, what they do out there makes all of you all and me look good. And that's what they've done. All I ask is that I've been around a lot in my time, but I've never seen anybody that was immune to hurt and pain. And I don't like people using words as a bandage for that. But I will say this, Mr. Mayor, this is directed directly at you. I made a lot of comments over the years that I've been here, and this one, like some, I mean from the very bottom of my heart. I can't say it any better. I've attacked you when I thought I was right. But you've been right in a lot more than I've been wrong. I know that you're stepping down and speaking on behalf of the people. I commend you for everything you have done. Oklahoma City will, when you're gone, will never really be the same. I don't know if anybody can take that job and run with the ball the way you did. I know there's several up for it. But you've done wonders for Oklahoma City.
Joe, I hate to wrap you up because you're on a roll.
Anyway, I know everybody's getting hungry. Finally, that is it.
You have reached the 3-minute limit, I'm afraid.
I commend you, and I wish you well, and whatever you're going to do, and I wish this council, because I'm going to be stepping away for quite a while myself. But anyway, I love you all. I pick on you, but I still love you. Y'all hang in there, carry the ball, and run with it. and I wish you well. I sincerely mean that.
Thank you,
Take
Joe.
care.
Calvin Franks.
But I will be bringing it up here tomorrow and dropping it off to Tom, and any of y'all that would like copies of it to verify some of the things that are going on that I feel some of the people need to know about, and I'd like to have answers to.
Calvin, we need your name and address for the record.
My name is Calvin Franks, 3820 Northwest 22nd Street, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.
Okay.
January 22nd, 2016, I was involved in an accident working for the city of Oklahoma City. We totaled approximately $250,000 vehicle, one of the big factors. And the reason that we did do that is, when I say the city, it's not the city, because I'm proud of the city. Just certain people employed at the city had us illegally disposing of 800,000 gallons of chemical waste down the sewer lines to keep from being fined by the DEQ or to keep it from overflowing. They had us transporting it in trucks not approved by DOT or registered with DOT to move that waste. They were also not even made to haul liquid at all. I mean, we had over 2,000 gallons in a cylinder, round cylinder instead of a tanker, sitting above the cab with no baffling. And we came around a corner and it tipped over onto my side. No fault of my own, because I wasn't even driving. Matter of fact, the guy driving the truck didn't even have his endorsement on a CDL to drive the vehicle. And, it permanently messed up my back for the rest of my life. And so now that I have a disability, the people over at Line Maintenance Division served me with a letter. They sent me home without pay, and I have been told that I have to find my own job within the city within 60 days or I'm terminated. And before this accident, I missed one day of work that, because I was in the hospital, I had a severe concussion and had to get 5 staples in my head. But I was at work the next morning with an ice pack on my head, underneath my hard hat, did my job. I mean, that's the kind of man I am. And where we was hauling this lagoon, this water from this lagoon from, is the address of it is actually 11601 West Stanley Draper Drive. And that just happens to be what they call First Step. But come to find out, a little research, it's actually owned by OKC Metro Alliance Incorporated. And it was just, what gets me is, why do they have us out there transporting this stuff using city man hours on a privately owned company?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, we've run the limit of the time, but I'm sure the city manager is going to look into everything you've said, and we'd love any information you can provide to us.
I'll be bringing a bunch of it up here tomorrow, and this is just a tip of what I have. So, thank you very much.
I appreciate you coming forward. Thank you. Okay, Roy Stafford.
Roy Stafford, 2101 South Harvey Avenue, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73109. These are some lovely drawings, aren't they? Beulah May, who I've spoken of a million times, has been the reason why I'm so difficult. My mom raised me to put my toys back where I got them. Well, I just took the crayons that these children drew on back to the mayor's office where they came from. You have to respect the fact that she also raised Graham Gordon Robinson. And this is not what I plan on speaking about today, but the practice of using the Oklahoma City Police Department to enforce an original bad behavior has to cease. Just within the 2 hours, I had the Oklahoma City Police contact on me because I was attempting to purchase a vehicle at Raul's car lot. Raul's kids were running his lot. He wasn't there. And there was me and a guy with me that's Cuban in descent, but he appears to be African American. We were treated totally differently than the Hispanic kid that came up next. So, make a long story short, I was transported here by the Oklahoma City police officer because his duty was to ensure that I left the premises. So, I've already spoken with Mr. Berry this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Troy. And Michael Washington? All right. You guys here for this? You would come up and speak? We're citizens to be heard, so you didn't sign up, but we can...
We figured we might use this opportunity.
Yeah, sure.
Ian McDermott, 2605 Northwest 58th, Mayor, City Council. I want to preface my statements by saying that I'm 100% supportive of public safety and safe neighborhood streets for the public to enjoy. However, I have 4 points to make in opposition to the measure, adding to 38 stop signs in a neighborhood that already contains 222. It's 222 stop signs existing in a single section, less than a single section, actually. First, I think this sets an extremely scary precedent when a private party can hold collections of signatures within 300 feet of the proposed stop signs and proceed to place the 38 stop signs across a square public grid that supports thousands of nearby residents and merchants. Every single sign is against the recommendation of Traffic Commission and traffic management staff. In fact, 16 of those proposed stop signs that passed against recommendations also did not collect the required amount of petition signatures. Now I propose a question that if every Oklahoma City neighborhood collected signatures and asked to increase their stop signs to 260, what is the reason to stop them? Second, stop signs are not proven method to reduce traffic volume or speed. The MUTCD, the ITE, and the Oklahoma City clearly defines them as devices to assign the right-of-way in an intersection. Even the original TEC report that Mr. Box cited, it submitted to Traffic Commission in 2015. It shows that this area did not see a significant reduction in traffic until I-235 was opened in the late 80s. And with the pending expansion of I-235, I believe the data shows that with even more commuter traffic was going to flow to that highway. With flow in mind, local traffic will always follow the path of least resistance. If local drivers are presented with new alternative routes, they're going to take them, as Councilman Shadid mentioned. Oftentimes, they flow from collectors to purely local streets. Chartel, Robinson, and Walker are all clearly defined as collector streets in Plan OKC Comprehensive Plan. It describes them, verbatim, the streets that move people through and between their neighborhoods. They connect to the surrounding areas and uses and become a secondary network of streets to the arterial system. Connectivity is important for all street types, but imperative for the connector as it creates the opportunity for pedestrians and bicyclists to use as a corridor separate from higher volume streets. I think that description speaks for itself, but it brings another group of negatively affected citizens into play, the cyclists. These are not only some of the most beautiful neighborhoods for recreational cyclists, but also designated commuter bicycle route for thousands of neighboring residents. It's the law of the land for riders to obey all traffic signals, but increasing stops along bicycle routes to a potential 6, and in the case of Walker Avenue, potential 8 stops in a mere half mile does not encourage cycling. Third, the definition, connector streets move people through and between their neighborhoods, raises the point that at no time during this privately commissioned plan to deter traffic was any consideration given to the surrounding communities of Midtown, Paseo, Jefferson Park, etc. Those residents and travelers rely on these roads as part of the established grid.
But if you want to sum it up in a few seconds,
Sure,
I'm glad
sure.
to let you summarize.
Basically that those citizens were not petitioned. They weren't asked about their opinion for these stop signs that affect them greatly. That I just wanted to bring up again that the stop signs were all not approved or not recommended by staff. And the data actually shows that traffic is decreasing in that area. It's gone down 14% in the last 10 years. That's pretty much it, guys. And I think that neighborhood is a little bit it's a little bit different. I think it's a little unique in the city that it abuts one of the highest density residential areas in the state. It is adjacent to some of the most vibrant entertainment districts in the city. That it requires a little bit special consideration. I'm glad that we had the conversation that we did today, and that we kind of identified that stop signs are not the only tool in the arsenal.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for bringing all that up.
Anthony McDermott, 415 North Broadway Avenue, 73102. And obviously I'm here in support of my son. I'm going to give you a little bit of history, and what we are both hoping today is that you guys get enough information to avoid making a mistake in the neighborhoods that are going to be asking you to do this exact same thing. So, just why I'm here and why Ian's here. In 2014, my family undertook redeveloping an abandoned gas station at 24th and Walker to make the Pump Bar and Restaurant. And most recently, we just opened a new bar right at 23rd and Walker. So we are involved physically, but evidently not in the system. So here are some facts. In 2015, TEC, as you've heard, was commissioned to do a traffic study for the Heritage Mesta neighborhoods. Okay. The express intent of that report was to discourage traffic through the neighborhood. It's right there in the report. So they came up with a 7-pronged approach. And the 7-pronged approach included two-waying Robinson, where it's one way, two-waying Western, where it's two-way, where it's one way. I'm sorry, two-waying where it's one way. Increasing traffic on Broadway, basically routing traffic around that entire section, deleting 2 signals on 13th Street, and these strategies all were to contribute to finding a way around that mile square. Okay. The last thing in that report was stop signs, proposed stop signs. 27 4-way proposed stop signs, which they subsequently backed down from. My point is that there was a strategy, there was a traffic study, there was a proposed idea to route traffic around the Heritage Mesta neighborhoods. The only thing that the neighborhood came with was the stop signs. There are no other proposals that I'm aware of that address the mitigating factors for that approach. So we are stuck with 19 4-way stops to add to 222 stop signs that are already placed in that neighborhood. So I think that when you asked Mr. Box a direct question, he somewhat obfuscated the answer. Yes, there is absolutely a clear criteria. There are clear criteria established for stop signs. None of these stop signs met those criteria, and I'm just giving you a heads up because it's coming, I think, unless you guys establish some criteria or change the system. And as Ian said, no one outside of the neighborhood was consulted. Nobody got notice. No one was consulted outside of the neighborhood.
Thanks, Anthony.
Because I know the neighborhoods are coming.
They're coming.
And not all of them can afford a traffic study or David Box.
Or David Box, right.
But they can do a petition. So what would you recommend besides?
But the conversation, once these stop signs go in place, you're going to get calls. You're going to get calls, particularly from Ward 2. But, the conversation should have been much wider. This is a 2-year process. I think it flew under the radar for a lot of people. Businesses like ours weren't even notified that there were hearings or traffic commission meetings to discuss this 19 stop signs.
You mean I'm going to get calls because they're going to divert traffic from those neighborhoods to the surrounding neighborhoods?
There are now going to be, how many on Walker? 8 stops. There are going to be 8 stops on Walker now in that 10 block. On a collector, as Ian pointed out, on the city-designated OKC Plan OKC, Connector Street. It's not a connector anymore.
All right.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. All right. Good meeting, everybody. Ready to adjourn?